Tonight we uncover the Vatican's most guarded secret, a forbidden book hidden for centuries. Close your eyes and journey with me into the shadowy archives to discover the manuscript they never wanted you to find. What ancient knowledge does it contain, and why were they so desperate to keep it hidden? Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. In a windowless chamber beneath the Vatican Library, a man works alone by lamplight. The year is 1684. His fingers, stained with ink and age, carefully turn pages of a manuscript so old the vellum crackles like autumn leaves. The room smells of dust and secrets, the particular scent of knowledge. Kept from daylight for centuries. Cardinal Lorenzo Cassoni is not supposed to be here, not at this hour, not with this text. His breath catches as he reaches the 73rd folio. Where a page should be, there is only a clean cut, a surgical excision made with deliberate care. The missing page is why he risked everything to examine this volume. It was here, he whispers to the empty room. Someone removed it. The cardinal's candle flickers as if stirred by an unseen breath. Shadows leap across the stone walls. For a moment, the darkness behind him seems to deepen, to gather like a presence. A drop of wax falls onto the manuscript, hardening instantly over faded script. The cardinal doesn't notice. His attention is fixed on a single line of text that precedes the missing page. Herein follows the true account of the Liber Lux Tenebris, as witnessed by these eyes and transcribed by this hand. And then nothing. The next page, which would have begun the account, is gone. Cardinal Cassoni closes the manuscript with trembling hands. The Liber Lux Tenebris, the Book of Light and Darkness. After decades of searching, he's found evidence. It existed, but like all who have sought it before him, he's found only its absence, its negative space in history. A sound in the corridor, outside footsteps. Approaching the cardinal extinguishes his lamp with a quick breath. Darkness floods the chamber as he slides the manuscript back into its place among thousands of others. Some texts are permitted to be studied. Others are merely allowed to exist, locked away and catalogued. But the book he seeks belongs to a third. Category texts so dangerous the Vatican removes all trace of their existence. As the footsteps pass, Cardinal Cassoni remains motionless in the dark. His heart pounds against his ribs, but not from fear of discovery, from certainty. The book exists, and the Vatican has spent centuries ensuring no one finds it. Why? What power could a single volume contain that would make the Church bury it so completely? What truth was written in its pages that required such careful, sustained erasure from history? The cardinal waits until silence returns, then makes his way blindly toward the door. He has seen enough to know his search has just begun, and enough to understand why every previous seeker has disappeared. Tomorrow, he will request reassignment to the Vatican secret archives. He will be patient, methodical. He will find what remains of the forbidden book, piece by fragmented piece. He doesn't know that he has only 6 weeks to live. The origin of the book begins where so many ancient secrets do in flames. Alexandria, 391 A.D. The greatest library the world has ever known is burning. Not for the first time, and not by accident. Smoke billows from the Serapeum, the daughter. Library that houses what remains of Alexandria's most precious scrolls. The mob that surrounds it moves with the particular energy of righteousness, a permission finally granted. At their head stands Theophilus, Patriarch of Alexandria, his face illuminated by the same flames consuming thousands of years of knowledge. "Tear it down," he cries, voice nearly lost in the roar of the fire. "Cleanse this temple of demons." The imperial decree has given him authority to purge the city of pagan influence. What better place to start than these scrolls filled with dangerous ideas, with gods that are not God, with magic that undermines miracle? But within the burning library, not everyone flees the flames dot in a chamber deep below street level. Untouched yet by fire or mob, a single oil lamp illuminates the face of an old man. Marius Valerius moved with the slow precision of one who has rehearsed this moment for decades. His white beard and simple robe might mark him as just another scholar, but the medallion around his neck, a silver ankh, reveals his true lineage, the last priest of the old knowledge, the keeper of what the Christians call heresy. Around him, 12 wooden chests stand ready, their contents carefully selected over years of secret preparation. Not all can be saved from the coming destruction. The library holds too much. Choices had to be made, priorities established. 11 of the chests contain what you might expect: mathematical treatises, astronomical observations, medical knowledge, histories of nations now vanished. The accumulated wisdom of 3,000 years, compressed into what a few trusted men can carry away into hiding. But the 12th chest holds only a single volume. Marius lifts it now. This book, bound in leather so dark it seems to absorb the lamplight. No title marks its cover. No author claims its creation. Its pages are not papyrus or common vellum, but something thinner, almost translucent, yet impossibly durable. He does not open it. The book is not for his eyes, not fully. He is merely its caretaker, the bridge between what was and what will be. "Master, we must hurry." A younger man appears at the doorway, face streaked with soot. The upper chambers are already lost. They're breaking through the western wall. Marius nods, carefully placing the book into the smallest chest and securing its lock with a key that hangs beside the ankh. "Take 4 men and the northern passage. The others will go east. I will go alone with this one." The younger man's eyes widen. "Alone?" But the streets are filled with the patriarch's men, which is why this must travel separately. If they capture 11 chests but miss one, we have succeeded. Marius presses the key into his assistant's hand. "Remember your oath. The meeting point remains the same. 3 days, then proceed without me." Above them, something massive collapses. Dust sifts down from the ceiling. The roar of the fire grows louder. "What is it?" the younger man asks, looking at the small chest. "What makes this one worth such risk?" Marius allows himself a faint smile. "It is the reason for all of this," he says, gesturing to the destruction above. "The book has many names. The Gnostics called it the Revelation of the Way. The Greeks named it the Unwritten Wisdom. But its true title is older than any language. Spoken today." He touches the chest with a reverence reserved for the divine. It is the Liber Lux Tenebris. And Theophilus burns the library not to destroy thousands of books, but to destroy this one. He simply doesn't know which one it is. The younger man stares at the chest, suddenly afraid. And if he finds it, then the last 15 centuries of gathering knowledge were for nothing, and what follows will be darkness without end. Marius lifts the chest. Now go, the others are waiting. As his assistant hurries away, Marius offers a silent prayer not to the Christian God whose followers are destroying his life's work, but to something older, something that remembers when the stars had different names. He slips through a narrow doorway hidden behind a stone shelf into a passage so ancient it predates the library itself. Behind him, the chamber with its 11 remaining chests waits for the flames to find it, or the mob. It doesn't matter which. What matters is the 12th chest and the book inside it, a book that contains something so dangerous that centuries later the Vatican will still be hunting for every copy, every fragment, every whispered reference to its existence. Rome, 718 AD, 327 years after Alexandria burned. The catacombs beneath the city were originally constructed for the dead, but the living have always found uses for them as well, especially those with secrets to keep, brother. Thomas moved through the narrow passages by memory alone, one hand trailing along the rough-hewn wall. No torch lights his way. After 12 years of making this journey, darkness has become his companion rather than his enemy. The weight in his satchel seems to grow heavier with each step. Not from physical mass the book is surprisingly light, but from the burden of knowledge it represents. 12 years as its keeper. 12 years of running, hiding, watching as others in the chain of guardianship were discovered and eliminated. Now, it's his turn to pass it on. The tunnel widens into a small chamber. Ancient Christian symbols adorn the walls, the fish, the anchor, the Alpha, and Omega, but they are recent additions, carved to disguise the chamber's true purpose. This place was sacred long before Christ's followers claimed it. A single torch burns in a wall sconce, illuminating 3 figures who wait in silence. Their faces are hidden by the deep hoods of simple brown robes, identical to Thomas's own. No names will be exchanged here. No knowledge of identities that could be extracted through torture. "You're late," says the tallest figure, voice barely above a whisper. "I was followed," Thomas replies. "I had to be certain I lost them before coming here." The tension in the chamber thickens. They all know what it means to be discovered by the Vatican's hunters. "Were you successful?" asks a second figure, a woman's voice. Thomas nods, reaching into his satchel to extract a small wooden box, its surface worn smooth by centuries of careful handling. Not the original chest from Alexandria that was abandoned long ago as too recognizable. Each generation of guardians transfers the book to a new container, unremarkable and different from its predecessor. "The text is intact," he says, placing the box on a stone shelf carved from the wall. "I've made the translations as instructed, but ... He hesitates, glancing at each hooded figure in turn. "Speak freely," says the third figure, an old man who has remained silent until now. "This chamber is secure." Thomas takes a deep breath. "I believe we're being betrayed. The hunters are getting closer with each transfer. They found Brother Marcus just 3 days after he received the text from me." A heavy silence fills the chamber. Marcus had been one of them, another link in the chain that had preserved the book since Alexandria. How did they find him? The woman asks. They knew exactly where to look, which means someone told them. Thomas straightens his shoulders. "I think it's time we discussed what we're protecting. I've been a guardian for 12 years, translated sections as required, but never read the text in full, never questioned why it matters." The tall figure steps forward. You know why. The book contains knowledge the church deemed too dangerous to exist. Knowledge they've tried to erase from human memory. But what knowledge, Thomas insists? What could possibly justify centuries of hiding? Of killing? I've translated fragments about celestial movements, about the nature of light, about methods of healing. Important, yes, but worth dying for? The three figures exchange glances. Then the old man sighs and lowers his hood, revealing a face lined with age and marked with the small tattoo of a crescent moon on his forehead, the sign of the inner circle of guardians. Show him, he says to the others. He's earned the right to know what he's sacrificed his life to protect. The woman steps forward and opens the box. Inside lies the book, its binding now cracked with age, despite the guardian's careful preservation. She lifts it with reverence and turns to a specific page near the center. Read, she tells Thomas, holding the book toward him. This passage only, the one I've marked. Thomas bends closer to the faded script. The language is ancient, but familiar. To him, after years of translation work, his lips move silently as he deciphers the text. Then his face goes pale. This can't be ... double quotes, he whispers. This would mean ... Yes, the old man says. Now you understand. This is not merely a book of forgotten science or hidden history. It's the reason history itself was rewritten. Thomas looks up, eyes wide with the terrible weight of comprehension. How many have read this full passage? In our order, only 7 living guardians know the complete truth. We add one new keeper to that circle every 20 years. The old man's face is solemn. The Vatican has never captured a guardian who knows what you now know. If they did, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. The translation work must continue, the tall figure says, but in smaller fragments, dispersed among more guardians. No one person should work with too much of the text at once. Thomas nods slowly, still processing the implications of what he's read, and what of the betrayal, he asks. The woman closes the book and returns it to its box. We've prepared for this possibility. From tonight, we implement the dissolution protocol. The book will be disassembled, each signature separated and hidden in a different location. The complete text will exist nowhere, and thus cannot be destroyed completely. And the locations? Thomas asks. No one will know them all, not even us. She secures the box with a small iron key. You will take 3 signatures to Constantinople. I will take 5 to the mountains. The others will be dispersed by our brethren. And when will they be reunited? The old man places a hand on Thomas's shoulder. When the world is ready for what this book contains. When the truth can no longer be suppressed by those who fear it. Thomas knows what this means. Not in his lifetime. Perhaps not for centuries. Is what I read truly accurate? He asks quietly. Not metaphor or allegory. It is truth, the old man says simply. Verified by each generation of guardians through observation and test. The book does not theorize, it demonstrates. Outside the chamber, a faint sound echoes through the catacombs, the scrape of metal against stone. All 4 guardians freeze. We're out of time, the tall figure whispers. They've found us. The old man moves quickly to a section of wall and presses against a specific stone. A narrow opening appears another tunnel, even older and deeper than the catacombs themselves. Quickly, he says, retrieving the box and pressing it into Thomas's hands. Take the northern passage. We'll create a diversion to the south. But the dissolution, Thomas begins. We'll have to wait. Go now. Keep it safe. Find Sister Agnes in Constantinople. She'll know what to do. Thomas hesitates only a moment before slipping the box back into his satchel. The weight feels different. Now, heavier with understanding. May wisdom guide your path, the old man says, the traditional blessing of their order. And yours, Thomas replies, then disappears into the hidden tunnel. The three remaining guardians exchange one final look before extinguishing the torch. Darkness swallows them as they move toward the approaching sounds, ready to lead the Vatican's hunters away from the true prize. None of them will survive the night, but the book will continue its journey, and the Vatican will continue its hunt. Venice, 1491. Antonio Contarini hunches over his workbench, squinting in the dim candlelight as he carefully applies ink to parchment. At 62, his hands are not as steady as they once were, but they remain precise enough for the delicate work of cartography. Maps have been his life's pursuit. Maps of coastlines and mountains, of trade routes and city streets. But the map taking shape before him now is different, a chart not of physical space, but of hidden knowledge. He works from a fragment of ancient text, carefully copying symbols, whose meaning he only partially comprehends. The fragment itself sits beside him, a single page of that strange, almost translucent material he has never encountered elsewhere. By all logic, it should have deteriorated centuries ago, yet it remains intact. The writing is clear as the day it was inscribed. The fragment came to him 5 months ago, delivered by a merchant from Constantinople who claimed to have acquired it from a dying monk. Contarini had paid a small fortune for it, not realizing then what he had purchased, not understanding that the page was alive in ways parchment should not be. A knock at his door startles him. Midnight has passed. He expects no visitors. Hastily he covers the fragment with a cloth and places a mundane nautical chart atop his. Work. One moment, he calls, moving stiffly to the door. The man who stands on his threshold is tall and gaunt, dressed in the simple black cassock of a priest. His face is deeply lined, his eyes dark beneath heavy brows. Signor Contarini? The priest's voice is soft, his Italian accented with something Eastern. I apologize for the late hour. The shop is closed, Contarini says, blocking the doorway. Return tomorrow if you seek a commission. The priest smiles thinly. I am not here for a map, Signor. I am here about the fragment you acquired from Constantinople. Contarini feels a chill that has nothing to do with the night air. I don't know what you mean. Please. The priest's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Let us not waste time with denials. My name is Father Bartolomeo Orsini. I represent certain interests within the Holy See who are most eager to recover the item in your possession. Contarini hesitates, mind racing. The merchant had said nothing about the Vatican seeking the fragment. But then the merchant is now dead found floating in a canal just days after their transaction. I have many antiquities, Contarini says. Carefully. You must be specific, Father Orsini sighs. A page from the Liber Lux Tenebris, approximately 8 inches by 12. The text appears to shift slightly when viewed from different angles. It feels cool to the touch, even in warm rooms. His gaze hardens. Shall I continue? The description is too precise to deny. Contemplating steps back, allowing the priest to enter. His workshop. How did you find me? He asks, closing the door. The fragment wants to be found, Orsini says cryptically. All pieces of the book call to each other, and to those who know how to listen. Contemplating returns to his workbench and removes the cloth, revealing the fragment. What is it? I've worked with ancient texts before, but the material is like nothing I've seen. The priest approaches slowly, eyes fixed on the fragment. He doesn't touch it. It is exactly what it appears to be, a page from a book, but not one made by human hands, at least not entirely. Orsini's voice has taken on a reverential quality. The complete volume contains 66 pages, each one detailed a different aspect of what we might call cosmic architecture. Architecture? Contemplating frowns. It appears to be a map. In a sense, it is a map of connections. This particular fragment deals with what the ancients called the celestial currents, pathways of energy that flow between stars, between worlds. Orsini finally looks up at the cartographer. The Church has spent centuries collecting these fragments, removing them from circulation. Why? What danger could such knowledge pose? The priest's expression darkens. The danger of certainty, Signor. The book doesn't theorize or speculate. It demonstrates. Its knowledge can be tested, verified, applied. He gestures to Contemplating's half-completed copy. Already you've begun to reproduce it, haven't you? Already you feel its pull. Contemplating doesn't deny it. Since acquiring the fragment, he's been consumed by it, working through the night, forgetting to eat. The symbols seem to whisper to him, guiding his hand as he copies them. What happens if I complete the copy? He asks. Nothing, if it remains incomplete, but a perfect reproduction would function as the original does. And if it were to be combined with other fragments, or worse, if someone were to reassemble the complete text. Orsini shakes his head. The book was disassembled for good reason, Signor. Its full contents are too powerful for any one person to possess. Yet the Vatican seeks to possess it, to preserve it, to prevent its misuse. Orsini reaches into his cassock and removes a small pouch. I am authorized to compensate you generously for the fragment. 3 times what you paid, I should think. Contemplating stares at the pouch. The amount would set him up comfortably for his remaining years. No more commission work, no more pandering to wealthy merchants who can't appreciate the artistry of his maps, but something holds him back, and if I decline? Orsini's face remains impassive. The fragment will still leave with me tonight. The only question is whether you benefit from the transaction. The threat is clear, yet delivered without heat or malice, simply a statement of fact. Contemplating looks down at the fragment. In the candlelight, the symbols seem to shift slightly, as if viewed underwater. For months he's been dreaming of them, seeing connections he can't quite articulate upon waking. What does it do? He asks quietly. The complete book. What power does it actually confer? Orsini is silent for a long moment. Understanding, he finally says. Not belief, not faith, but certainty about the nature of reality, about what lies beyond death, about the true history of human civilization. His voice drops to a near whisper. It is why some call it The Book of Light and Darkness. It illuminates what was deliberately obscured by the Church, by those who preceded the Church, and others who found it expedient to control what humanity knows about its own origins. Orsini extends his hand for the fragment. Now your decision, Signor. Cooperation or compulsion? Cantarini looks again at his half-completed copy. Even unfinished, it has revealed patterns he never imagined, connections between celestial bodies that contradict everything currently taught about the heavens. If one fragment contains such revelations, what might the complete book reveal? He makes his choice. Take it, he says, pushing the fragment toward the priest, but answer me one question truthfully. Orsini raises an eyebrow. If I can. Does the Vatican possess all the other fragments? The priest's hesitation is brief but noticeable. Not all. Some remain elusive. Cantarini nods slowly. Then others might yet encounter them, might yet piece together what you wish to keep hidden. It is possible, but unlikely. Orsini, carefully, wraps the fragment in a black cloth and tucks it into his cassock. The guardians who originally dispersed the book were thorough. Some fragments may be lost forever. And my copy, Cantarini gestures to his work, incomplete and therefore harmless. Keep it if you wish. A curiosity for your collection. Orsini places the pouch of coins on the workbench. Consider it payment for your discretion as well. After the priest departs, Cantarini remains at his workbench, staring at his unfinished copy. Something about the priest's confidence disturbs him. The certainty that fragments might remain lost, that the book might never be reassembled, unless, of course, there exists a map to the fragments themselves. Cantarini smiles faintly and opens a drawer, removing a second sheet of parchment, the true copy he's been working on, far more detailed than the decoy he allowed Orsini to see. The Vatican might possess the fragment, but its knowledge remains here, captured in ink and memory, and if one fragment found its way to him, perhaps others will follow. Vatican City, present-day Dr. Elena Russo moves through the climate-controlled vault with practiced efficiency, her footsteps silent on the polished floor. As a senior archivist in the Vatican Secret Archives, she has access to collections few scholars will ever see, documents that have shaped history, altered the course of nations, and occasionally remained hidden for centuries. Today, she's conducting a routine inventory in the restricted collection, an area that requires special clearance even among those with access to the archives. The shelves around her hold texts deemed too sensitive for general research, personal papers of controversial popes, diplomatic communiques with content still politically explosive, and materials related to exorcism and other spiritual matters. The modern church prefers to downplay, but her attention is focused on a particular lacuna, a gap in the collection that shouldn't exist. Cabinet 37, drawer 9 is empty. According to the catalog, it should contain a sealed case with document reference XR7734 Theta, a fragmented text recovered from a monastery in Greece in 1872. The drawer has been empty for at least 6 months, since Elena's last inventory, but the breach hasn't been reported. She checks the electronic log that records all access to the vault. No one has officially removed the item, which means either the log has been tampered with or the document was removed without being scanned, both serious. Security violations. Elena takes a small digital camera from her pocket and photographs the empty drawer, then carefully closes it. She'll need to report this, but something makes her hesitate. In her 15 years at the archives, she's developed an instinct for trouble, and this particular document, G recalls seeing its designation. During her doctoral research, XR7734 Theta. The Greek letter had caught her eye, as it was unusual in the Vatican's Latin-based cataloging system. She had requested access then, but been denied, her clearance level insufficient for what the system classified as theologically sensitive material. Now she has the clearance, but the document is gone. Elena completes her inventory, noting the missing item in her report, but marking it for administrative follow-up rather than as a security breach. This gives her time to do some quiet investigation before triggering a formal inquiry. Back in her office, she accesses the main catalog database. The entry for XR7734 Theta is frustratingly sparse. Parchment fragment 1. Greek origin recovered from St. Catherine's Monastery, 1872. Content related to pre-Nicene cosmological speculation. Restricted by order of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, 1943. Access requires level Omega clearance. Level Omega is higher than her own clearance. Only a handful of people in the entire Vatican would have it: the Pope himself, the Secretary of State, the Prefect of the Secret Archives, and perhaps 2 or 3 others. But there's something else unusual about the entry. Most restricted documents include a reference to the specific papal decree or congregational decision that classified them. This one simply states, restricted by order of, with no citation or file number. It's as if someone wanted to restrict access while leaving minimal record of having done so. Elena opens a different database, one that tracks document transfers between Vatican departments. If XR7734 Theta was legitimately moved, there might be a record here. She finds nothing under the official reference number, but on a hunch, she searches for any transfers to or from Cabinet 37 in the past year. A single entry appears, dated 4 months ago. Temporary transfer of uncatalogued materials from Cabinet 37 to Office of Historical Analysis. Authorized by Cardinal Moretti. Duration: indefinite. Purpose: authentication. Cardinal Alessandro Moretti. The name sends a chill through her. Not because of the man himself. Elena has only met him once, briefly, at an archives function, but because of his position. Moretti heads a division within the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith that few know exists, the Historical Assessment Commission. Officially, the HAC evaluates newly discovered historical texts for their theological implications before they're made available to scholars. Unofficially, according to archive gossip, they're the Vatican's version of a cleanup crew ensuring that potentially problematic documents never see the light of day. The phone on Elena's desk rings, startling her. She quickly closes the database. Before answering, Dr. Russo, this is Father Donato from the prefect's office. Are you available to meet with Cardinal Valenti this afternoon? He has some questions about your recent acquisition work. Elena's pulse quickens. Cardinal Valenti is the prefect of the secret archives, her ultimate superior. Of course, she replies, keeping her voice steady. What time would be convenient? He can see you at 3. His office, not the conference room. A private meeting, then, not a routine check-in. I'll be there. Thank you, Father. After hanging up, Elena sits motionless, thinking rapidly. The timing is too coincidental. She reported the missing document less than an hour ago, and already the prefect wants to see her. Either the system flagged her search of the transfer database, or someone is monitoring her activities more directly. She has 4 hours before the meeting. Time enough to do a little more digging carefully. The archive's internal search system is powerful, but limited to its own collections. For broader historical context, Elena uses a restricted academic database available only to senior Vatican researchers. She searches for references to St. Catherine's Monastery and the year 1872. The results are sparse but intriguing. An expedition led by a Vatican archaeologist, Father Giulio Bartoli, spent 3 months at St. Catherine's in 1872, ostensibly cataloging ancient manuscripts. But Bartoli's official report is oddly brief, mentioning significant discoveries requiring further analysis, without elaborating. More interesting is what happened after the expedition. Bartoli was recalled to Rome suddenly, then reassigned to a small parish in Sicily. He never published again. 2 other scholars who accompanied him disappeared from academic records entirely. Elena searches for Bartoli's personal papers, which should be in the archives if he was on an official Vatican mission. She finds a catalog entry, but when she requests the file, the system returns an error. Document temporarily unavailable. See Administrator. Another dead end. She's about to log out when a new message appears in her inbox. The sender is unfamiliar. m.costa@vatican.va.dr Russo. Your interest in Cabinet 37 has been noted. Before your meeting with Cardinal Valenti, you might find it useful to review the attached file. This is not in your best professional interest, but it may be in the interest of truth. A concerned colleague Elena stares at the message. It could be a trap opening. An unauthorized attachment could violate security protocols and give someone reason to dismiss her. But it could also be legitimate. The sender is using an internal Vatican email address. She scans the attachment for viruses, then opens it. It's a single-page scan of a handwritten letter dated October 17, 1872. The handwriting is cramped, hurried, and in some places barely legible. It's signed by Father Bartoli, Most Reverend Father General. I write in haste and great distress. What we found at St. Catherine's exceeds our worst fears. The fragment is genuine carbon dating, confirms its age to approximately 1st century CE. Yet the material is unlike any parchment known. More disturbing is its content, which aligns precisely with the descriptions in the Antonelli report of 1823. The text itself contains what appears to be a first-hand account of the events in Jerusalem, circa 33 CE, but with significant departures from the canonical narrative. Most troubling is the section describing what the author calls the mechanism of transfiguration, a detailed, technical explanation that frames the miraculous in terms of natural law. I am convinced this is another fragment of the Liber Lux Tenebris. If so, we must locate and secure any other pieces that may have survived. The monks at St. Catherine's indicated the fragment was part of a larger collection acquired from Constantinople in the 15th century, but subsequently dispersed during an Ottoman incursion. I recommend immediate suppression of our findings and acquisition of any related materials from St. Catherine's by purchase, if possible. By other means, if necessary. In Cristo, Father Giulio Bartoli, S.J. Elena, reads the letter twice, her academic mind automatically analyzing its authenticity. The writing style and paper appear consistent with the period. The reference to the Antonelli report means nothing to her, but Cardinal Giacomo Antonelli was Secretary of State under Pope Pius IX in the 1800s. But it's the mention of the Liber Lux Tenebris that sends a jolt of recognition through her. The Book of Light in Darkness. She's encountered that title before in her research on early Christian Apocrypha, always as a passing reference, never with any substantive information. A mythical text, most scholars assumed, like the Book of Thoth or the Emerald Tablets, more legend than reality. Yet Bartoli writes of it as something known to the Vatican, something feared. Elena checks the time 2 hours before her meeting with Cardinal Valenti. Not long enough for comprehensive research, but perhaps enough to find one more piece of the puzzle. What happens now depends entirely on you, Father Salvatore says. We face a situation that requires both expertise and discretion. The fragment you've been investigating was indeed removed from the archives, but not without authorization. He slides a document across the table. Elena recognizes the papal seal at the bottom. This is a direct order from His Holiness, authorizing the temporary transfer of certain restricted materials for special analysis. I am the designated custodian. Elena skims the document. It appears genuine, though she's never seen this particular form before. What kind of analysis requires removing a document from the archives without normal documentation? She asks. The kind that pertains to matters beyond ordinary theological concerns, Father Salvatore replies. Dr. Russo, what do you know about the office of the Cardinal Defender? She chooses her words carefully. Only what I read today, that it's connected to something called the Vigilis Protocol, established in 718 A.D., to locate and contain fragments of the Liber Lux Tenebris. The elderly priest nods. A simplified but accurate description. The office exists outside the public structure of the Vatican. Even most cardinals are unaware of its existence. I have served as Cardinal Defender for the past 27 years. Elena blinks in surprise. This unassuming old man holds a position that has existed for 13 centuries, dedicated to finding and securing fragments of a mysterious book. Why are you telling me this? She asks. Because circumstances have changed, Cardinal Valenti says. 4 months ago, a new fragment was discovered, not by us, but by individuals who recognize its significance. They've offered to exchange it for the fragment we already possess. An exchange? Why would the Vatican consider that? Because the new fragment contains information vital to locating the remaining pieces, Moretti explains. Essentially, a map. With it, we could finally locate and secure all existing fragments of the Liber Lux Tenebris, and prevent anyone else from assembling the complete text, Elena concludes. But that still doesn't explain why you're telling me. Father Salvatore leans forward. Because the individuals who possess the new fragment have requested an expert in ancient manuscripts to verify its authenticity before the exchange. someone not previously connected to the office of the Cardinal Defender, someone with impeccable academic credentials. He pauses. Someone like you, Dr. Russo. Elena feels as if the floor has dropped away beneath her. You want me to authenticate a fragment of a book the Vatican has been hiding for centuries? We want you to join a select group of scholars who have helped protect humanity from knowledge it isn't prepared to handle, Father Salvatore says. The Liber Lux Tenebris isn't merely a theological challenge to the Church. It contains practical knowledge that, if widely disseminated, would destabilize the foundations of human society. What kind of knowledge could possibly have that effect? The three men exchange glances again. Then Cardinal Valenti nods slightly. Show her, Father Salvatore says. Moretti opens a briefcase and removes a clear container. Inside is what appears to be a piece of parchment about the size of Elena's hand. But as he places it on the table, she realizes it's not parchment at all. The material is thin, yet somehow rigid, with a faint iridescence that shifts as the light hits it. This is fragment theta, Father Salvatore says, the document missing from your inventory. It's approximately 2,000 years old, yet shows no signs of deterioration. The material has been analyzed by our scientists. It contains elements not found on the periodic table. Elena stares at the fragment. The writing on it appears to be Greek, but with unfamiliar symbols embedded within the text. Not found on the periodic table, she repeats. That's not possible. Nor should it be possible for a text to accurately predict future events, Father Salvatore continues. Yet this fragment contains a description of astronomical alignments that didn't occur until 1943, written nearly 2 millennia earlier. These are the technical claims, Moretti adds. But the theological implications are even more profound. The text describes what we would call miracles, but as reproducible phenomena based on principles of physics, beyond our current understanding. Elena looks up from the fragment. You're saying this book explains how to perform miracles? It explains that what we call miracles are simply applications of natural laws we don't yet comprehend, Father Salvatore corrects. Laws that, if widely understood, would fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with the divine, with authority, with reality itself. And the Church has been hiding this knowledge for centuries, Elena says, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. The Church has been protecting humanity from knowledge it isn't ready to integrate, Father Salvatore replies calmly. Imagine what would happen if anyone could perform miracles through technical means. If the barrier between the possible and impossible collapsed overnight. If the fundamental mysteries that give life meaning were suddenly reduced to instruction manuals. Elena looks again at the fragment. Whatever material it's made from seems to gather light, holding it briefly before releasing it in effect subtle enough to miss if you weren't looking closely. The exchange is scheduled for tomorrow night, Cardinal Valenti says. You have until then to decide whether to assist us. If you decline, we will respect your decision, but you will be transferred from the archives to a teaching position at the Pontifical University. Your access to restricted materials will be permanently revoked, and if I agree, you will join us for the exchange, authenticate the new fragment, and become part of a tradition stretching back 13 centuries, Father Salvatore says. You will help us complete a mission begun in 718 A.D. to ensure that all fragments of the Liber Lux Tenebris are secured before they can be reassembled. I need time to consider, Helena says. Of course, Cardinal Valenti stands. You're free to return to your office. But please understand, nothing we've discussed can leave this room. The future of the Vigilus Protocol depends on absolute secrecy. As the guards escort her back to the main archives level, Elena's mind churns with questions. The mysterious book fragments made of impossible materials. A secret office dedicated to finding and securing them. And now, someone else hunting these fragments, someone with resources and knowledge to locate a piece even the Vatican couldn't find. Back in her office, she finds one final email from her unknown correspondent, Dr. Russo, by now you've been offered a role in their mission. Before you decide, ask yourself, who benefits from keeping this knowledge hidden? Is humanity truly not ready, or are those in power simply protecting their authority? If you wish to learn more, come to the Angelica Library at 8 p.m. Reference desk. Ask for the Borromeo manuscript. This will be my final communication. M.C. Elena sits back in her chair, the weight of decision heavy upon her. The Vatican wants her to help them secure and hide these fragments. This mysterious correspondent wants to show her. What? An alternative perspective? Or draw her into something more dangerous? As a scholar, her instinct is to seek knowledge, to uncover truth, regardless of consequence. But the expressions on those three men's faces, particularly Father Salvatore's, suggested genuine concern, not just institutional self-preservation. What if they're right? What if the Liber Lux Tenebris truly contains knowledge humanity isn't ready to handle? Or what if that's the lie they've told themselves for 13 centuries to justify suppressing a truth that would transform human understanding? Elena checks her watch. 6 hours until the meeting at the Angelica Library. 6 hours to decide whether to join a centuries-old mission of containment or to pursue the truth, whatever the cost. The fragment in that sterile container had seemed almost alive, gathering light, holding secrets written 2 millennia ago. Secrets worth hiding. Secrets worth finding. And now she must choose which side of that ancient struggle will claim her allegiance. The Angelica Library stands on Piazza Sant'Agostino, its weathered stone facade giving no hint of the treasures within. Founded in 1604, it houses one of Rome's finest collections of rare manuscripts and early printed books. Unlike the Vatican Library, it's open to the public, though its most valuable holdings remain in restricted areas, accessible only to qualified scholars. Elena arrives at 7:45 p.m. Her decision still unmade. The library will close to the general public in 15 minutes. Already the reading rooms are nearly empty. The soft rustling of pages and occasional whisper, the only sounds breaking the studious silence. She approaches the reference desk, where an elderly librarian is organizing index cards. "Excuse me, Elena," says quietly. "I'm looking for the Borromeo manuscript." The librarian looks up, studying her face for a moment. Without speaking, he reaches beneath the desk and produces a small key attached to a wooden tag marked Studio 7. "Third floor," he says. "Last door on the left. You have 1 hour. Elena takes the key, puzzled by the lack of questions or verification. Almost as if she were expected. Studio 7 turns out to be a small research room equipped with a single table, 2 chairs, and a bookstand. The walls are lined with locked cabinets. The room smells of old leather and paper dust. No one is waiting. Inside, Elena checks her watch, 8:02 p.m. She's slightly late, but the room is definitely empty. As she turns to leave, she notices a slim volume already placed on the bookstand. Bound in faded brown leather with no title on the spine, it looks unremarkable. Among the library's treasures, she approaches it cautiously. The cover bears only a simple emblem, a circle within a square, within a triangle. No author, no title, no date. Elena is reaching for it when the door opens behind her. "Please examine it," says a woman's voice. It's quite genuine. Elena turns to see a slender woman in her 60s, silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wears the simple dress and cardigan of an academic, but her bearing suggests someone accustomed to authority. "Professor Costa?" Elena guesses. The woman smiles slightly. "Monica Costa, yes. Former curator of medieval manuscripts at the Vatican Library." She closes the door behind her. "Until I was encouraged to retire after asking too many questions about certain restricted collections. You were the one who emailed me." "Yes, and I must apologize for the melodrama. But my experiences have taught me that caution is essential when dealing with matters related to the Liber Lux Tenebris." The casual way she speaks the name as if discussing an ordinary text, rather than a book the Vatican has hidden for centuries, catches Elena off guard. "You know about it? More than most. Less than I'd like." Professor Costa gestures to the book on the stand. "That volume contains what little I've been able to compile about the book over 30 years of research. Most of it is circumstantial references. In other texts, historical incidents connected to its fragments, scientific analyses conducted in secret." Elena looks at the slim volume skeptically. 30 years of research, and that's all you have? The Vatican is quite thorough in its erasures, Dr. Russo. Finding even fragments of the truth requires tremendous persistence. Costa sits in one of the chairs. "Please look through it. You'll find it more illuminating than anything Cardinal Valenti shared with you." Elena opens the book carefully. The pages are modern, typed rather than handwritten, with photographs and diagrams interspersed throughout. She flips to the table of contents. Historical attestations, 1st, 5th, 10th centuries. Known fragment locations and movements, scientific analyses, material properties. Transcriptions and translations, partial. Theoretical implications, the Vigilus Protocol. A critical assessment. She turns to the first section and begins to read. It opens with a quotation from a 2nd century text. "The book did not come from human hands, nor was it written with ink upon papyrus. It appeared first to the 7 sages of Heliopolis, who transcribed what they could comprehend of its wisdom. But the transcription itself manifested strange properties, so that what was copied became like the original, resistant to time, responsive to thought, revealing only what the reader was prepared to understand." The passage is footnoted to the Hermetic Codex Alexandria, circa 150 CE, a text Elena has never encountered in the Vatican catalogues. "This is genuine?" she asks, looking up at Costa. "The Hermetic Codex?" "Yes, though the Vatican holds only fragments. Most was destroyed in the burning of the Serapeum in 391 AD. Costa leans forward. "But I didn't bring you here to examine ancient testimonials. Turn to section 3. Elena flips forward to scientific analyses. Here she finds something far more concrete: photographs of laboratory equipment, spectroscopic readings, microscopic images of what appears to be the same strange material she saw in the Vatican conference room. These are tests run on fragment lambda, recovered from a monastery in Ethiopia in 1987, Costa explains. I was part of the assessment team before the Office of the Cardinal Defender took possession of it. Elena examines the data. According to the readings, the material contains molecular structures that shouldn't be stable under normal conditions. Elements bonded in impossible configurations. Properties that defy conventional physics. This can't be correct, she says. These atomic arrangements would collapse instantly. Yet they don't. The material maintains perfect stability. It doesn't deteriorate, doesn't react with oxygen or other elements, doesn't even accumulate dust. Costa taps the page. And most remarkably, it resonates at frequencies that affect human neural patterns. Elena looks up sharply. What does that mean exactly? It means the text doesn't just contain information, it transmits it. Not through ordinary reading, but through direct neural interaction. The reader experiences the content rather than merely decoding symbols. Costa's expression grows somber. That's what makes it so dangerous in the Vatican's eyes. It bypasses interpretation. It conveys direct, experiential knowledge. Elena thinks of the fragment she saw in the Vatican, how the strange material seemed to gather light, to pulse with subtle energy. What kind of knowledge? She asks. That depends on the fragment. Each contains different information. Some describe technological principles beyond our current science. Others contain historical accounts that contradict official narratives. Still others explain aspects of human consciousness that religions have traditionally claimed as spiritual mysteries. And you've read these fragments? Experienced this direct transmission? Costa shakes her head. I've only handled one fragment, briefly, before it was secured. But even that limited exposure was ... transformative. She pauses, choosing her words carefully. Imagine suddenly understanding something you've studied your entire life, not as an abstract concept, but as lived experience, as if you've always known it deep in your cells. Elena thinks of her years studying history, always separated from the past by the veil of interpretation and incomplete evidence. The thought of direct, unmediated access to historical truth is seductive in a way she hadn't anticipated. Turn to the final section, Costa says, the assessment of the Vigilus Protocol. Elena does so, finding a detailed analysis of the Vatican's centuries-long program to locate and secure fragments of the Liber Lux Tenebris. According to Costa's research, the protocol was established not in 718 AD, as the card catalog indicated, but nearly a century earlier in 632 AD, just as Islam was beginning to spread across the Middle East. The timing is significant, Costa explains. The fragmentation and dispersal of the book occurred during the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. For nearly 2 centuries, the fragments circulated relatively freely, passed among scholars and mystics across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Then why start collecting them in the 7th century? What changed? According to my research, a fragment was discovered in Damascus that contained information about the book itself, how it functions, how the fragments relate to each other, and most importantly, What happens when they're brought together? Elena leans forward. And what does happen? The fragments aren't just pieces of a whole, Dr. Russo. They're entangled, quantum-linked. In modern terminology, each responds to the proximity of others. When assembled in the correct configuration, they don't just reconstitute a book that can be read. They generate a field effect that alters perception on a mass scale. A field effect? You mean like a broadcast? More like a shift in the background conditions of consciousness itself. Think of it as changing the operating system of human cognition. Costa gestures to the book. This is why the Vatican has spent 13 centuries finding and separating these fragments, not merely to suppress information, but to prevent a transformation they believe humanity isn't prepared to undergo. Elena sits back, absorbing the implications. And you? Do you believe we're prepared? Costa smiles faintly. I believe suppressing truth is never the answer, no matter how disruptive that truth might be. Knowledge itself is neutral. How we apply, it determines its value. But if this transformation is as profound as you suggest, it represents an evolution, not a catastrophe, Costa interrupts. The Vatican's fear stems from institutional self-preservation, not genuine concern for humanity. They know the book's revelations would undermine systems of control that have persisted for millennia. Elena's mind races with questions, but one rises above the others. Why are you telling me this? What do you want from me? Cardinal Valenti told you about the exchange scheduled for tomorrow night. A new fragment for the one they already possess. Yes. What he didn't tell you is that the new fragment contains not just a map to other pieces, but instructions for activating them without full assembly. Costa leans forward. The Vatican doesn't plan to secure the remaining fragments, Dr. Russo. They plan to neutralize them, to render them inert, stripping them of their transformative properties. Is that even possible? According to my sources, yes. With the right sequence of energy fields, the quantum entanglement between fragments can be permanently disrupted. Costa's expression hardens. 13 centuries of human wisdom, lost forever. Your sources, Elena repeats. You're working with the people who have this new fragment. Costa inclines her head slightly. I've aligned myself with those who believe. The book's knowledge belongs to humanity, not locked in Vatican vaults. And what is it you want from me? The same thing the Vatican wants your expertise as an authenticator, but in service of preservation, not destruction. Costa reaches into her bag and removes a small wooden box. Tomorrow night, when you examine the fragment at the exchange, you need only confirm one thing, that the activation sequence it contains is genuine. Elena eyes the box warily. How could I possibly determine that? Costa opens the box, revealing what appears to be a thin metal disc, about the size of a coin. This contains a quantum resonance pattern recorded from another fragment. If you're carrying this during the authentication, it will react to genuine activation sequences by warming slightly. You want me to sabotage the exchange, Elena says. Flatly. I want you to ensure the truth is preserved. Costa closes the box and slides it across the table. The Vatican has already decided to trust you with secrets they've kept hidden for centuries. I'm simply asking you to use that trust to protect knowledge, not destroy it. Elena doesn't touch the box. And if I refuse, then you'll validate the fragment according to your best scholarly judgment and whatever happens afterward will happen without your intervention. Costa stands. I've given you information the Vatican withheld. What you do with it is your choice. She moves toward the door, then pauses. One last thing. In Section 4, you'll find a partial translation of Fragment Lambda, the one I handled. Briefly, I suggest you read it before making your decision. It might help you understand what's truly at stake. After Costa leaves, Elena sits motionless for several minutes, staring at the small wooden box. Then she turns to Section 4 of the manuscript and begins to read. The translation is incomplete, with gaps and uncertain passages marked by brackets. But even fragmented, the text is unlike anything she's encountered in her years of scholarship. The division between observer and observed is the fundamental illusion. When this division is recognized as construct rather than reality, the limitations imposed by temporal perception dissolve. The past does not die. The future is not unborn. All exists in simultaneous potentiality, accessible through the correct alignment of consciousness. What religions have named divine revelation is simply perception freed from the constraints of sequential processing. The prophets and mystics achieved this alignment through various means, some deliberate, others accidental. But the capacity exists within all human consciousness. The mechanisms demonstrated in the untranslatable can be reproduced through technological means, creating fields that facilitate this alignment without years of spiritual practice. When properly configured, these fields allow direct access to the untranslatable layer of reality, where information exists independent of time and physical medium. The passage continues with technical details. Elena can't fully comprehend descriptions of energy configurations, resonance patterns, geometrical arrangements that supposedly alter the fundamental relationship between consciousness and reality. It reads like a blend of quantum physics and mysticism, yet with a precision that suggests practical application rather than mere philosophy. If genuine, it describes nothing less than a technology for expanding human consciousness beyond its normal constraints for accessing information directly without the mediation of language or sequential learning. Elena closes the book, her mind spinning with implications. If this is what the Liber Lux Tenebris contains, a manual for transcending the limitations of ordinary human perception, then both the Vatican's fear and Costa's reverence make sense. Such knowledge would indeed transform civilization. All existing power structures, religious, political, economic, depend on controlling the flow of information, on maintaining certain fundamental assumptions about reality. If those assumptions were undermined, if direct access to knowledge became possible, the small wooden box sits untouched on the table, containing a device that could help preserve this dangerous, revolutionary wisdom or confirm its authenticity. For those who would destroy it, Elena has until tomorrow night to decide which path she would choose. As she leaves Studio 7, locking the door behind her, she doesn't notice the figure watching from the shadows at the end of the corridor. A man in simple clerical attire, his face obscured by the dim lighting. Father Ignacio Salvatore, Cardinal Defender, had anticipated Costa's approach. He had expected Elena to seek more information before making her decision. What he doesn't yet know is which way that decision will fall. Dawn breaks over Vatican City, painting the dome of St. Peter's in pale gold. In his private chapel, Father Salvatore kneels in prayer, his aged body held rigid despite the discomfort. He has maintained this morning ritual for 63 years. Since his first day as a novice in the Society of Jesus. But today's prayers carry a particular urgency. After centuries of vigilance, the Vigilus protocol faces its greatest challenge. He rises slowly when finished, his joints protesting the movement. Age has bent his once tall frame, turned his hair white, mapped his face with lines. But his eyes remain sharp, missing nothing. In his Spartan office, a room whose existence appears on no Vatican floor plan, Salvatore reviews the surveillance report from the previous evening. Elena Russo visited the Angelica Library as expected, met with Monica Costa as predicted. Their conversation lasted precisely 47 minutes. What was not predicted? Costa gave Elena an object. Small, concealed in a wooden box. Salvatore frowns. This complicates matters. A knock at the door interrupts his thoughts. "Enter," he calls. Cardinal Moretti appears, looking harried despite the early hour. "We have confirmation, Father. The exchange is set for 11 p.m. tonight. Santa Maria degli Angeli, in the Meridian Room." Salvatore nods. The location is significant, built within the ruins of the Baths of Diocletian. The church contains a meridian line used as a solar observatory, a place where science and faith intersect, where measurements of celestial bodies once helped reform the calendar. "And our asset?" Salvatore asks. "In position since yesterday. The fragment is authentic, at least in composition. We haven't been able to verify its content. That's why we need Dr. Russo." Salvatore closes the surveillance report. Speaking. "Of whom has she made any unusual movements this morning?" "None. She arrived at the archives at her usual time. She's currently reviewing medieval manuscripts, nothing related to our matter." "And the quantum resonator Costa gave her?" Moretti's eyebrows rise. "You knew about that?" "I suspected. Costa wouldn't approach her without offering some technological advantage." Salvatore steeples his fingers. "We need to neutralize it before tonight, without Dr. Russo's knowledge." "That won't be simple. If she's carrying it on her person, she won't be. Too risky. She'll keep it somewhere secure until needed." Salvatore stands, moving to a cabinet filled with ancient-looking texts. "Have you read the complete history of the Vigilus Protocol, Alessandro?" The sudden change of subject catches Moretti off guard. "Only the operational summaries. The historical context seemed less relevant to current needs." Salvatore selects a volume bound in faded red leather, its pages yellowed with age. "Then you don't understand what we're truly facing." He opens the book to a marked page. This is the testimony of Cardinal Giovanni Vesovi, written in 1347, just as the Black Death was beginning to sweep through Europe. He reads aloud. "The fragment recovered from Constantinople manifested effects beyond any previously documented. When exposed to sunlight during the vernal equinox, it emanated a field that affected all within a radius of 50 paces. Those touched by this field reported visions of other times, other places. Some spoke in languages unknown to them. Others exhibited knowledge they could not possibly possess. Most disturbing were the physical effects. Wounds healed without treatment. Afflictions that had persisted for years vanished within hours. One young novice, blind from birth, gained full sight, describing colors he had never seen with perfect accuracy. These miracles, if we dare call them such, came not from divine intervention, but from a mechanism described within the fragment itself, a method for manipulating what it called the fundamental substrate of existence. This is not God's work, but a technology so advanced it appears miraculous to our limited understanding. I write this with trembling hand, for the implications test the very foundations of our faith. If what this fragment suggests is true, then many of the miraculous events upon which our church is built may have been manifestations of this same technology wielded by those who understood its principles. Salvatore closes the book. Cardinal Vescovi ordered the fragment sealed in lead and buried beneath the foundations of St. John Lateran. He then took his own life, unable to reconcile what he had witnessed with his faith. Moretti's face has paled. Is this record accurate? Entirely. And it describes just one fragment apiece dealing with physical healing. Other fragments contain equally disruptive knowledge, methods for directly accessing memories across generations, techniques for perceiving events at vast distances, principles that, if understood, would render our most advanced physics obsolete. And tonight we acquire the map to all remaining fragments, Moretti says, not just a map. Instructions for neutralizing the fragment's active properties. Salvatore returns the book to its shelf. The alternative is unthinkable. If Costa's group were to assemble even a partial sequence of fragments ... they could trigger a field effect, one that might not be containable. Salvatore's expression darkens. Imagine the Black Death in reverse, not a plague that kills the body, but a transformation that alters consciousness on a fundamental level. Suddenly, millions of people perceiving reality differently, accessing knowledge directly rather than through controlled channels. Chaos, Moretti murmurs, or evolution? Salvatore counters, surprising the younger cardinal. That's the true dilemma we faced for 13 centuries. Are we protecting humanity from a disaster or preventing its advancement? He sighs heavily. Every cardinal defender must confront this question. None of us has had the arrogance to answer it definitively. Then why continue the protocol? Why not simply allow the fragments to be found? Because once released, the process cannot be reversed. If we are wrong about humanity's readiness, the consequences would be irreversible. Salvatore moves to the window, looking out over St. Peter's Square below. Better to err on the side of caution, generation after generation, until we can be certain. And Dr. Russo? Where does she fit into this? She represents what we've always feared and hoped for simultaneously, a mind capable of understanding the fragment's significance, yet unbound by centuries of protocol. Salvatore turns back to Moretti. That's why her choice tonight is so crucial. Will she help us secure and neutralize the fragments? Or will she side with those who would release their power without consideration of consequences? And if she chooses wrongly, Salvatore's face hardens. Then the Vigilus protocol includes contingencies, measures I would prefer not to implement, but will if necessary. He moves toward the door. Now, arrange for the neutralization of that quantum resonator. Dr. Russo must make her decision based on knowledge and conscience, not technological advantage. As Moretti departs, Salvatore returns to the cabinet of historical records. From a hidden compartment behind the books, he removes a small leather case. Inside, nestled in velvet, lies a fragment of the same strange material Elena saw the previous day, iridescent, seemingly alive with captured light. The first fragment ever recovered, the one that initiated the Vigilus Protocol 13 centuries ago. Unlike the others, this piece contains no practical knowledge, no transformative technology, only a warning, written in a language that predates any known human tongue, yet somehow translatable by any who touch it directly. What you hold changes all who comprehend it. Choose wisely whether to proceed. Some revelations once experienced cannot be unfelt. Some knowledge once integrated transforms the knower beyond return. Salvatore closes the case. After 63 years serving the protocol, 43 as a priest, 27 as cardinal defender, he still doesn't know if they're preserving humanity or stunting it. Tonight, for better or worse, a new voice will join that ancient debate, and much depends on whether Elena Russo believes the truth she discovers in the Meridian Room of Santa Maria degli Angeli. The Church of Santa Maria degli Angeli rises from the ancient ruins of the Baths of Diocletian, like a phoenix from ashes, sacred space reclaimed from pagan excess. Designed by Michelangelo in the 16th century, it incorporates massive granite columns from the original Roman structure, creating a sanctuary of solemn grandeur. Elena arrives at 10:30 p.m., half an hour before the scheduled exchange. The massive bronze doors are unlocked despite the late hour, swinging open at her touch. Inside, the vast nave lies empty, illuminated only by sparse electric lights that mimic candles, casting long shadows across marble floors. Following Cardinal Valenti's instructions, she makes her way to the right transept, where a simple wooden door leads to the Meridian Room, a space most tourists never see. Created in 1702 by Francesco Bianchini, the Meridian line cuts across the room's flora, strip of bronze inlaid in marble, oriented perfectly north-south. During midday, sunlight enters through a small hole in the southern wall, projecting a perfect circle of light that moves across the line, marking the sun's daily and seasonal journey with scientific precision. At night, the room feels different. Mystical. The absence of sunlight transforms the meridian from scientific instrument to symbolic bridge between heaven and earth. Two figures wait inside, Cardinal Valenti and Father Salvatore. No sign of Cardinal Moretti. Dr. Russo Valenti greets her. Punctuality is appreciated. Where are the others? Elena asks, noting the empty room. Cardinal Moretti is securing the perimeter with our security team, Father Salvatore explains. The exchange party has not yet arrived. Elena's hand unconsciously touches her jacket pocket, where the small wooden box from Professor Costa rests. She'd found no opportunity to test the quantum resonator, and now feels the weight of uncertainty. Is she carrying a sophisticated scientific instrument, or an elaborate prop in a game of manipulation? Once they arrive, what exactly will my role be? She asks. You will authenticate the fragment they're offering, Father Salvatore says. Specifically, you'll verify that the content matches what they claim instructions for locating and activating. The remaining pieces of the Liber Lux Tenebris. How am I supposed to authenticate content I've never seen before? I'm not familiar with the book's original language or format. You won't need to be, Valenti assures her. The fragment is self-translating. Upon direct contact, You'll know whether it contains authentic activation sequences because you'll experience them directly. This aligns with what Costa told her about the fragment's neural interaction properties. And if I confirm it's authentic, then we proceed. With the exchange, Father Salvatore says, our fragment for theirs. The door opens before Elena can ask further questions. Cardinal Moretti enters accompanied by 3 strangers, 2 men and a woman, all dressed in conservative business attire rather than ecclesiastical garments. The woman steps forward tall, elegant, with silver-streaked dark hair worn loose around her shoulders. With a shock, Elena recognizes Monica Costa, though she looks markedly different from their meeting at the Angelica Library. Gone is the academic dowdiness, replaced by an aura of confident authority. Cardinal Defender. Costa acknowledges Father Salvatore with a slight nod. It's been many years. Not enough, Monica, Salvatore replies, his tone suggesting personal history beyond professional conflict. You know each other? Elena asks, unable to hide her surprise. Professor Costa was once among the Vatican's most promising scholars, Salvatore explains. Before she chose a different path. Before I chose truth over institutional control, Costa corrects, then turns to Elena. Dr. Russo, I'm pleased you're here to oversee the authentication. It gives both parties assurance of objectivity. Elena feels caught in cross-currents of tension she doesn't fully understand. Costa speaks as if they're meeting for the first time, giving no indication of their previous encounter. Is this for the benefit of the cardinals, or part of some strategy Elena hasn't been made privy to? Let's proceed, Cardinal Valenti says, gesturing toward a table positioned directly over the meridian line. Both fragments will be placed here for examination. One of the men accompanying Costa steps forward, placing a flat black case on the table. Costa's associate is middle-aged, with close-cropped gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He moves with military precision. General Harris, we'll open the case once your fragment is presented, Costa says. General? Elena wonders what branch of military would involve itself with ancient manuscripts. Cardinal Moretti produces a similar case from inside his cassock and places it beside the first. Both remain closed. Dr. Russo, Father Salvatore says, please step forward to conduct the authentication. Elena approaches the table, acutely aware of being watched by both sides. The weight of the quantum resonator in her pocket feels suddenly obvious, though logically she knows it's not visible. You'll need to examine both fragments, Costa explains. Ours first, to verify its content, then the Vatican's, to confirm. It's the fragment we seek. What exactly am I looking for? Elena asks. The fragment we're offering contains activation sequences for the remaining pieces, General Harris says, speaking for the first time. His accent is American, his tone clipped and professional, written in a script that appears to shift between known languages. The content should include specific astronomical alignments and resonance frequencies. And how do I verify this? Direct contact, Father Salvatore says. The material interfaces with neural pathways when touched with bare skin. You'll know immediately whether it contains what they claim. Elena hesitates, suddenly uncertain. Will this interface ... have any lasting effects? None, Costa assures her. The fragments transmit information, but don't permanently alter perception unless activated in specific sequences. Unless that's precisely what this fragment contains, activation sequences, Cardinal Moretti points out. Which is why Dr. Russo's authentication is crucial, Costa replies smoothly. She'll confirm whether the fragment contains theoretical descriptions or actual activation mechanisms. Elena looks from one side to the other, feeling the weight of centuries of conflict compressed into this single moment. Open the cases, she says finally. General Harris unlocks the black case first, lifting the lid to reveal what appears to be a piece of translucent material about the size of a playing card. Like the fragment Elena saw in the Vatican, it seems to gather light, holding it briefly before releasing it in subtle pulses. Cardinal Moretti opens the Vatican's case next. Inside lies a similarly sized fragment, its edges irregularly shaped, as if torn rather than cut. The two pieces appear to be made of identical material, though the patterns of script visible on their surfaces differ. Dr. Russo, Father Salvatore, says, "Please authenticate the first fragment." Elena removes her glasses, setting them carefully on the table. Then, with only slight hesitation, she reaches for Costa's fragment. The moment her fingertips touch the strange material, a sensation unlike anything she's experienced floods through her nervous system. Not painful, not even uncomfortable, but overwhelmingly present, as if every cell in her body has suddenly become receptive to a previously undetectable frequency. And with the sensation comes understanding. Not words on a page to be interpreted, but direct comprehension, bypassing the normal mechanisms of reading and translation. The fragment contains exactly what Costa claimed a method for locating the remaining pieces of the Liber Lux Tenebris through astronomical alignments. Each fragment was hidden at a location corresponding to a specific celestial configuration that occurs only once every few centuries. But it contains something else as well: instructions for activating the fragments individually without needing to reassemble the complete book. Each piece, when exposed to the correct resonance frequency during its corresponding astronomical alignment, generates a field effect that can transmit its content to receptive minds within a limited radius. Most critically, the fragment includes a warning: attempted neutralization of any fragment's active properties will trigger a quantum cascade effect, potentially destabilizing all fragments simultaneously. In other words, the Vatican's plan to render the fragments inert could actually trigger the very field effect they fear. Elena pulls her hand back, the sudden cessation of information leaving her momentarily disoriented. She blinks several times, readjusting to normal perception. "Well?" Cardinal Valenti prompts. Elena's hand moves unconsciously toward her pocket, where the quantum resonator should confirm whether the activation sequences are genuine. But as her fingers slip into the pocket, she finds only emptiness. The resonator is gone. She looks up, meeting Father Salvatore's steady gaze. There's knowledge there and something like sympathy. They found it, removed it without her awareness. She has only her own judgment to rely on. "The fragment contains what they claim," she says carefully. "Astronomical alignments for locating other fragments, plus resonance frequencies for individual activation." "And does it include actual activation mechanisms?" Father Salvatore asks. "Or merely descriptions?" Here's the crucial question. If Elena confirms the fragment contains active sequences rather than theoretical descriptions, the Vatican might refuse the exchange, fearing the knowledge is too dangerous. She makes her choice. Theoretical only, she lies. It describes the principles but doesn't include the actual sequences needed for activation. A flicker of something relief, disappointment, crosses Costa's face. Now the Vatican's fragment, General Harris insists. Elena turns to the second piece, again touching it with her bare hand. The same strange sensation washes over her, but the information transmitted is entirely different. This fragment contains detailed descriptions of consciousness as a field phenomenon rather than a product of neurological processes. It explains how human perception ordinarily filters reality, creating the illusion of separation between observer and observed. Most significantly, it outlines how this filtration can be temporarily bypassed, allowing direct experience of what it calls the unified field of potential. The implications are staggering. If this information were widely understood, it would transform human self-perception on a fundamental level. The boundaries between self and other, between past and future, between matter and energy would be recognized as constructs rather than absolutes. Elena withdraws her hand, momentarily overwhelmed by the scope of what she's glimpsed. This is the genuine fragment theta, she confirms, her voice slightly unsteady. It contains information about consciousness as a field phenomenon and methods for altering perception. Costa nods, apparently satisfied. Then we have an exchange. Not quite yet, Father Salvatore interjects. Dr. Russo, you confirm their fragment contains locational data and activation principles, but not active sequences. Is that correct? Elena meets his gaze directly. Yes, the activation would require additional information not contained in this fragment alone. She's not entirely sure why she's maintaining this deception. Perhaps because something in the fragments, warning about neutralization attempts, has disturbed her. Perhaps because she's still uncertain which side truly has humanity's best interests at heart. Very well, Father Salvatore says, the exchange may proceed. Cardinal Moretti looks as if he might object, but a subtle gesture from Salvatore silences him. Costa and General Harris exchange glances. Then Harris carefully lifts their fragment and places it in the Vatican's case. Cardinal Moretti does the same with fragment theta, transferring it to the black case. The exchange is complete, Father Salvatore declares. As agreed, both parties will now depart separately. No surveillance, no pursuit. Costa closes the black case containing fragment theta and hands it to General Harris. A pleasure doing business, Cardinal Defender, though I suspect our paths will cross again soon. Sooner than you might wish, Salvatore replies CRYPTICALLY. As Costa's group prepares to leave, she pauses beside Elena. Thank you for your objectivity, Dr. Russo. Should you ever wish to continue your research outside Vatican constraints, we would welcome your expertise. She slips something into Elena's hand, a small card with only a phone number embossed on. Its surface dot after Costa's group departs, Cardinal Valenti secures the case containing the newly acquired fragment. You'll want to examine this more thoroughly in proper laboratory conditions, he tells Father Salvatore. No, Salvatore responds. The neutralization must begin immediately. Tonight's astronomical alignment is already optimal. Elena's pulse quickens. Neutralization? But I thought you needed to locate the other fragments first. This fragment contains sufficient data to begin the process, Salvatore explains. The quantum entanglement between pieces means affecting one influences all. But what if Elena stops herself, realizing she can't reveal knowledge of the warning without exposing her deception? Yes, Dr. Russo? Salvatore prompts. She changes. Tech. Asterisk. What if the neutralization process doesn't work as expected? She asks instead. Shouldn't we conduct more thorough analysis before proceeding? The protocol has anticipated this moment for centuries, Salvatore says. The procedure has been extensively modeled and prepared. We cannot risk delay. Cardinal Moretti takes the case from Valenti. The equipment is ready in the sub-basement. Sub-basement? Elena repeats. I didn't know this church had facilities. Below ground level. There's much about this site you don't know, Dr. Russo, Father Salvatore says. Santa Maria degli Angeli wasn't chosen randomly for tonight's exchange. It sits at a convergence point of geomagnetic currents, one of several. Factors necessary for the neutralization process. He turns to the cardinals. Proceed to the chamber. I'll join you shortly. After they leave, Salvatore fixes Elena with a penetrating gaze. You lied about the fragment's contents. The statement, delivered without accusation or anger, nonetheless strikes Elena like a physical blow. She starts to deny it, then reconsiders. This man has spent decades immersed in the mysteries of the Liber Lux Tenebris. Deception seems futile. Yes, she admits. Why? The fragment contained a warning. Attempting to neutralize the quantum properties could trigger a cascade effect, exactly what you're trying to prevent. Salvatore nods slowly. I suspected as much. Costa would have included such a safeguard, whether genuine or fabricated. You knew I would lie? I hoped you would tell the truth, whatever you perceived it to be. He sighs. The burden of the cardinal. Defender isn't making perfect choices, Dr. Russo. It's making decisions with profoundly incomplete information. Knowing the consequences of error in either direction could be catastrophic. And you've decided neutralization is worth the risk. I've decided that after 13 centuries of containment, we can no longer guarantee the fragments will remain secure. Technology evolves. Resources like Costa's group grow more sophisticated. Eventually, assembly becomes inevitable. He pauses. Better a controlled neutralization now than an uncontrolled activation later. Elena studies the ancient priest, seeing not the zealous defender of dogma she had imagined, but a man carrying an impossible responsibility, balancing the preservation of transformative knowledge against the risk of destabilizing civilization. What will happen to me now? She asks. That depends on you. Salvatore moves toward a concealed door in the wall, previously invisible in the dim lighting. You can leave, return to your position at the archives, continue your research within. Established parameters. Costa will contact you again, offer you a different path. You'll choose according to your conscience. Or you can come with me now. Witness the neutralization process. See the end of a mission that began 13 centuries ago. He opens the door, revealing a narrow stone staircase descending into darkness. Few have ever observed this chamber. Fewer still have seen the technological application of principles contained in the fragments themselves. The offer surprises her. Why would you show me this? Because regardless of tonight's outcome, the future of this knowledge will soon rest. With a new generation, you've proven yourself capable of independent judgment, even at personal risk. Something like approval flickers in his tired eyes. The Vigilus protocol has always adapted to survive. Perhaps its next incarnation requires different perspectives. Elena hesitates at the threshold, poised between retreat and deeper involvement. The academic in her craves the knowledge this man offers, a glimpse behind centuries of secrecy. But something else gives her pause, the memory of that warning in the fragment, the certainty with which it predicted catastrophe from attempted neutralization. What if the warning is genuine? She asks. What if neutralization triggers exactly what you're trying to prevent? Then we face it together, with the best tools and minds available, Salvatore replies. Either way, the time of separation and secrecy is ending. The fragments are coming together, Dr. Russo. The only question is whether we guide that process, or suffer it. Elena makes her decision and steps through the doorway. The staircase descends far deeper than seems possible, spiraling downward through what must be ancient Roman foundations into still older stone. The air grows cooler, tinged with an electrical scent that reminds Elena of lighting. Finally, they reach a massive circular chamber that defies architectural logic. The stone walls curve in perfect arcs, fitted without visible mortar joints, reminiscent of pre-Roman construction techniques. Yet embedded within these ancient surfaces are distinctly modern elements: fiber, optic cables, sensor arrays, and what appears to be a sophisticated energy distribution system dot at the chambers. Center stands a raised platform of black stone. Positioned upon it is a device unlike anything Elena has ever seen, a crystalline structure suspended within interlocking rings of some metallic alloy. The rings rotate independently, powered by mechanisms hidden within the platform. Cardinals Valenti and Moretti oversee technicians making final adjustments to the apparatus. The case containing the newly acquired fragment sits open beside the device. What is this place? Elena asks, her voice hushed in the vast space. The Romans called it the Ades Arcana, the secret shrine, Salvatore explains. It predates the baths built above it by at least a millennium. The early church incorporated it into their own structures, recognizing its unique properties. He gestures toward the curved walls. The chamber naturally amplifies certain frequencies. In ancient times, it was used for oracular purposes. We've adapted it for more precise applications. And the device? A quantum field generator built according to principles extracted from various fragments over centuries. It creates the specific resonance pattern needed to disrupt the entanglement between pieces of the Liber Lux Tenebris. As they approach the platform, Cardinal Moretti looks up with evident surprise. Father, is it wise to bring Dr. Russo into this phase of the operation? Dr. Russo has earned the right to witness the culmination of her work, Salvatore replies, and perhaps to help us understand it better. He turns to Elena. The fragment you authenticated contains activation sequences we couldn't have interpreted without your expertise. Now we can use that knowledge to ensure the book's power remains dormant. A technician approaches, carrying the fragment with specialized handling equipment that prevents direct contact. We're ready to begin, Father. Proceed, Salvatore commands. The fragment is placed at the center of the crystalline structure. The rings begin to rotate more rapidly, generating a low humming that Elena feels in her bones rather than hears with her ears. The alignment is perfect, Cardinal Valenti announces, checking readings on a nearby console. resonance frequencies matching target parameters. Elena watches, fascinated and disturbed in equal measure. The fragment at the center of the device begins to pulse with light not reflected illumination, but energy emanating from within the strange material itself. The pulses quicken, synchronizing with the rotation of the rings. Something about the pattern triggers recognition in Elena's mind, a correspondence with the warning she glimpsed within the fragment during authentication. The cascading frequency, described in that warning as materializing before her eyes. "Wait," she says, stepping forward. The resonance pattern, it's matching what the fragment warned against. Salvatore's expression remains calm, but his eyes sharpen with attention. "Explain." The warning specified that attempting neutralization through forced quantum disentanglement would trigger a cascading resonance pattern, exactly like what's happening now. She points to the accelerating pulses of light. "It's not neutralizing the quantum connection, it's amplifying it," Cardinal Moretti scoffs. "A safeguard embedded by those who wish to protect the book's power, nothing more. Or a genuine physical limitation we don't fully understand," Elena counters. Either way, the pattern matches the warning precisely. Salvatore studies the pulsing fragment, then the readings on the console. After a long moment, he turns to the technician. "Suspend the process, Father," Moretti objects. "We can't stop now. The alignment won't recur for decades." "Better delay than disaster," Salvatore says firmly. "If Dr. Russo is correct, we may be inadvertently triggering exactly what we've spent centuries preventing." The technician begins shutting down the apparatus, but the fragment continues pulsing, its rhythm now independent of the slowing rings. "It's not stopping," Valenti observes, alarm evident in his voice. "The process has become self-sustaining," the technician confirms. "The fragment is generating its own field." Elena feels a strange pressure building in the chamber, not physical but perceptual, as if reality itself is being compressed around them. "It's beginning," she says, somehow certain. The cascade effect. Salvatore moves with surprising speed. For his age, approaching the platform. "Containment Protocol Alpha. Evacuate all personnel except essential operators." As aides and technicians rush toward the exits, Salvatore turns to Elena. "You should go. What happens next may not be safe." "What are you going to do?" "Attempt to contain the field effect within this chamber. The walls were designed for this contingency, to absorb and disperse certain types of energy." But even as he speaks, the fragment's pulsing light intensifies, sending visible waves through the air like ripples in water. Where these waves pass, reality seems to distort slightly, colors shifting, solid objects momentarily transparent. It's too late for containment, Elena realizes. The field is already propagating. Cardinal Valenti staggers suddenly, clutching his head. "I can see ... everything, all at once." His eyes widen with a mixture of wonder and terror. Past and future. Layered realities. It's too much. He collapses to his knees, still conscious but overwhelmed by whatever perceptual shift has overtaken him. Cardinal Moretti seems unaffected, watching with clinical detachment. "The field appears to impact individuals differently," he observes, "perhaps depending on neural architecture or psychological readiness." Elena feels the waves washing over her, but experiences only a subtle alteration, a heightened awareness, a slight expansion of her perceptual field. She can sense the chamber's ancient history now, layers of time existing simultaneously rather than sequentially. Yet unlike Valenti, she isn't overwhelmed by the expansion. Salvatore alone seems completely unaffected. He moved through the propagating waves with perfect composure, reaching the console beside the platform. The field is expanding beyond the chamber. A remaining technician reports, voice strained. Radiation pattern suggests exponential growth. How far will it reach? Elena asks. Impossible to predict, Salvatore replies. It depends on variables we don't fully understand. The entire city, Moretti suggests, perhaps beyond. Elena considers. The implications: thousands, potentially millions of people suddenly experiencing a fundamental shift in perception. For some, like Valenti, the change might prove devastating. For others, merely disorienting. For a few, perhaps transformative in ways they're prepared to integrate. We've triggered exactly what the protocol was designed to prevent, she says. A mass perceptual shift without preparation or guidance. Not exactly, Salvatore corrects. Still working at the console. What we've triggered is significantly limited compared to what full assembly of the book would generate. This is a localized effect, temporary rather than permanent. How can you be sure? Because I've seen it before. Salvatore's fingers move across the controls with practiced precision. Frankfurt, 1682. A similar attempt at neutralization, a similar cascade effect. Hundreds affected for approximately 6 hours, then a return to normal perceptual parameters. History doesn't record such an event, Elena objects. History records what we allow it to record, Dr. Russo. Salvatore activates a final sequence on the console. The Vigilus protocol isn't merely about containment. It's about managing inevitable failures of containment. A new frequency emanates from the chamber walls themselves, deeper, more resonant than the fragments' pulsations. The two patterns interact, creating interference that gradually stabilizes the expanding field. We can't stop the propagation completely, Salvatore explains, but we can modulate its effects, make them less overwhelming for those unprepared. Elena watches in fascination as the chaotic waves settle into more regular patterns. Cardinal. Valenti's distress visibly eases, though his expression remains one of profound disorientation. So the neutralization failed, she concludes. This attempt, yes. Salvatore straightens from the console. But the protocol continues. We adapt, learn, prepare for the next opportunity. And meanwhile, thousands of people experience a temporary expansion of consciousness without warning or context. Most will rationalize it as dreams, hallucinations, religious experiences. Salvatore's tone is matter of fact. The human mind is remarkably adept at maintaining its established paradigms, and those who don't rationalize it, those who recognize it for what it is, a slight smile crosses the old priest's face. They find us, or we find them. The Vigilus protocol has always recruited from those who glimpse what lies beyond ordinary. Perception. Understanding dawns on Elena. Like you, Salvatore nods. Milan, 1943. The last significant failure of containment. I was a boy of 12, suddenly perceiving reality as malleable, time as non-linear. It nearly drove me mad until a priest found me, the previous cardinal defender. He explained what I had experienced and offered me purpose. The field continues. to stabilize the fragment's pulsations gradually diminishing. The immediate crisis appears to be passing. What happens now? Elena asks. We monitor the field's dissipation, manage any public incidents that arise, prepare for Costa's next move. Salvatore studies her with new intensity. And you decide whether to continue with us or pursue your own path. What do you mean? The card Costa gave you. The offer it represents. You could contact her, join those who seek to disseminate this knowledge without restriction. He gestures around the chamber. Or you could stay, help us develop a more nuanced approach to containment. Neither path is without merit. Neither is without risk. Elena considers the card still in her pocket, the choice it represents. And if I choose neither, if I simply return to my research, pretend none of this happened, that option no longer exists, Salvatore says gently. You've touched the fragments, Dr. Rousseau, experienced direct neural interaction with the book's content. That changes a person, creates connections that persist. She knows immediately that he's right. Already she can feel subtle alterations in her perception, nothing as dramatic as Valenti's collapse, but undeniable nonetheless. A heightened awareness of patterns, an ability to perceive connections previously invisible. The fragments have left their mark on her consciousness. I need time to decide, she says finally. Of course, Salvatore gestures toward the staircase. You're free to leave whenever you wish, but I suspect we'll speak again soon, regardless of your choice. As Elena turns to go, a final pulse from the fragment sends a wave of energy through. The chamber weaker than before, but still potent. In that moment, she experiences a flash of insight, so vivid it stops her in her tracks. The Liber Lux Tenebris isn't just a book. It's a key design to unlock human potential that has remained dormant for millennia. Neither entirely benevolent nor malevolent, but transformative in ways that transcend such judgments. And its fragments are finding their way back together, not by chance, but by design. An ancient design now accelerating toward completion. The realization fades as quickly as it came, leaving Elena with the uncanny certainty that she has glimpsed something true, something the fragments themselves wanted her to understand. She leaves the underground chamber without another word, ascending toward a world that remains unaware of the subtle transformation beginning to ripple through its collective consciousness. Behind her, Father Salvatore watches her departure with eyes that have seen such moments before and will likely see them again. The Vigilus protocol continues, but perhaps in forms its founders never anticipated. 3 days after the failed neutralization attempt, Rome appears unchanged. Traffic still clogs ancient streets. Tourists still crowd the Colosseum and Vatican museums. Life continues its familiar rhythms, yet beneath this normal surface, something has shifted. Reports filter through official channels of unusual experiences across the city, vivid dreams of distant times and places, momentary perceptions of impossible geometries, brief sensations of remembering events that haven't occurred. Most are dismissed as hallucinations, stress reactions, or overactive imaginations. A few receive closer attention from discreet observers connected to the Vigilus protocol. Elena notices the effects in smaller ways. Colors seem more vibrant. Connections between seemingly unrelated ideas form spontaneously in her mind. Time occasionally feels elastic rather than linear moments stretching or compressing, according to some logic beyond ordinary physics. She has returned to her position at the Vatican archives, resuming her cataloging duties as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Neither Cardinal Valenti nor Father Salvatore has contacted her since that night. Even Cardinal Moretti, who technically oversees her department, has maintained a conspicuous distance. They're giving her space to decide, she realizes, waiting to see which path she'll choose. The card Costa gave her remains in her desk drawer, untouched but not forgotten. Its embossed number represents one possible future alignment with those who believe humanity should have unrestricted access to the knowledge contained in the Liber Lux Tenebris. But another path calls to her as well, the possibility Father Salvatore suggested of reforming the Vigilus protocol from within, developing more nuanced approaches to managing transformative knowledge. On the fourth day, as she's examining a collection of medieval astronomical charts, Elena makes a discovery that sends a chill through her body. The chart, created in 1472 by a German monk named Johannes Reichel, depicts celestial alignments spanning several centuries. Annotations in the margins describe significant conjunctions and their purported influences on earthly events, but hidden within these conventional astrological notations is something else, a precise mapping of the same alignments contained in the fragment she authenticated during the exchange. 7 specific celestial configurations, each corresponding to a location where a fragment of the Liber Lux Tenebris was hidden. The chart shouldn't exist. According to everything she's learned, knowledge of these alignments was contained exclusively in the fragment Costa's group exchanged with the Vatican. Yet here it is, hidden in plain sight for over 5 centuries in the Vatican's own archives. More disturbing still, the chart includes an additional notation at its center, a date and time. June 21st, 2025, 4:17 a.m., the summer solstice, just 10 months from now. Beside this date is a symbol Elena recognizes from the fragment, the sign indicating complete alignment, when all 7 celestial configurations converge simultaneously. According to the fragment, such an alignment occurs only once every 1,843 years. The last was in 182 A.D., the period when the original Liber Lux Tenebris was reportedly transcribed. If this chart is accurate, the next optimal moment for complete assembly of the book is less than a year away. Elena carefully photographs the chart with her phone, then returns it to its folder. Her mind races with implications. Did Salvatore know about this chart? Is this why the neutralization attempt was made now, despite the risks? Or is this knowledge hidden even from the current cardinal defender, a secret embedded in the archives by someone centuries ago, waiting to be discovered at precisely this moment? She leaves the archives early, blaming a headache, which isn't entirely untrue. The discovery has intensified the subtle perceptual shifts she's been experiencing since the night at Santa Maria degli Angeli. Instead of returning to her apartment, Elena finds herself drawn to the church itself. Something about the ancient sight calls to her not the Baroque structure visible above ground, but the mysterious chamber hidden beneath it. The church is open to the public, though few tourists visit on this ordinary weekday afternoon. Elena moved through the vast space, past massive granite columns that once supported the frigidarium of Diocletian's baths, toward the meridian room where the exchange took place. The room appears normal, no sign of the hidden door that led to the underground chamber. Yet Elena knows it exists, concealed within the ancient STONEWORK dot. As she studies the wall, a voice speaks from behind her. You won't find it that way. She turns to see a young priest she doesn't recognize, perhaps 30, with olive skin and observant eyes. I'm sorry. The entrance you're looking for, he clarifies. It only appears under certain conditions. Elena tenses, suddenly wary. I don't know what you mean. The priest smiles slightly. Dr. Russo, please. Father Salvatore sent me to find you. He anticipated you might return here after discovering the racial chart. How could he possibly know I'd find that specific document? Because he placed it in the collection you were cataloging. The priest gestures toward a side chapel. He's waiting to speak with you. If you're willing. Elena hesitates only briefly before following. The side chapel is small, dedicated to St. Bruno, founder of the Carthusian order. Father Salvatore sits in silent prayer before the altar, his aged frame looking somehow more frail in daylight than it did in the mysterious underground chamber. He doesn't turn as they approach, yet speaks as if seeing her. The chart was created to be found at this moment, Dr. Russo, not by me, but by Brother Johannes himself, acting on instructions received during the field event of 1472. Field event? Elena repeats, taking a seat in the pew beside him. Another failure of containment, one of several throughout history. Salvatore finally turns to her, his eyes reflecting the flickering votive candles. Each time the fragment's quantum entanglement is disturbed, information propagates outward. Most recipients cannot retain or comprehend what they receive. A few can, like Brother Johannes, like myself, like you. Salvatore folds his gnarled hands in his lap. We've been monitoring your neural activity remotely since the incident. Your brain is integrating the information rather than rejecting it, reconfiguring neural pathways to accommodate expanded perception. Under normal circumstances, such surveillance would disturb Elena deeply. Now it seems merely confirmation of what she already suspected. The chart shows a complete alignment occurring next June, she says, the optimal moment for assembling all fragments of the book. Yes, did you know this before the neutralization attempt? I knew an alignment was approaching, not the precise date. Salvatore's expression remains serene, though his words carry weight. The protocol maintains certain information in separated streams. No single individual knows everything, not even the Cardinal Defender. Why show me the chart now? Because you've reached a decision point, Dr. Russo, and you deserve to make that decision with as much information as possible. He nods to the young priest, who has remained respectfully distant. Father Leandro will provide whatever additional context you require. I haven't decided anything yet, Elena objects. Haven't you? Salvatore's penetrating gaze suggests he sees more than she's willing to admit. You haven't contacted Professor Costa, nor have you committed fully to the Vigilis protocol. You're seeking a third path. Elena doesn't deny it. Since the night in the underground chamber, she's been increasingly certain that both existing approaches to the Liber Lux Tenebris are fundamentally flawed. Total suppression ignores the book's potential benefits. Unrestricted dissemination disregards legitimate concerns about destabilization. What if there is a third path? She asks. A way to preserve the knowledge while managing its integration responsibly? Many cardinal defenders have asked that same question over 13 centuries, Salvatore replies. None found a satisfactory answer, perhaps because they were trying to answer it alone, within institutional constraints. A flicker of interest crosses the old priest's face. What are you suggesting? I'm not sure yet. Elena chooses her words carefully, but it seems significant that the fragments are emerging now, converging toward an alignment that occurs only twice in 4 millennia, as if the knowledge itself is seeking expression at a specific moment in human development. A romantic notion, Dr. Russo. Knowledge doesn't have agency, doesn't it? The fragments respond to human consciousness. They transmit information directly to neural pathways and maintain quantum entanglement across vast distances. She leans forward. What if the Liber Lux Tenebris isn't merely a repository of advanced knowledge, but a technology designed to interface with human consciousness at a specific stage of evolution? Salvatore studies her with new intensity. You've been experiencing accelerated integration effects. Yes, no point denying it. I'm seeing connections I couldn't perceive before. Patterns across disciplines, across time periods. And what conclusion? Have these patterns led you toward that the book wasn't hidden to prevent humanity from accessing dangerous knowledge? It was fragmented to preserve that knowledge until humanity reached a stage where integration became possible. Elena feels the certainty of this insight as she speaks it. Not just possible for exceptional individuals, but for human consciousness. Collectively. Salvatore is silent for a long moment, his ancient eyes focused on something beyond the physical chapel around them. When he finally speaks, his voice carries a weight of revelation. In 1943, during my own exposure to the field, I experienced something similar, a glimpse of purpose behind the book's design. He sighs deeply, but I couldn't maintain that perspective once the effect faded. Conventional thinking reasserted itself. But what if we could maintain it? What if that expanded perception could be stabilized rather than suppressed? A dangerous proposition, Dr. Russo. Expanded perception without adequate foundation leads to psychosis, not enlightenment. Salvatore gestures to Father Leandro. Show her. The young priest approaches, producing a tablet computer from his satchel. On it plays security footage from what appears to be a hospital ward. Elena recognizes Cardinal Valenti, strapped to a bed, his face contorted in anguish as he shouts in multiple languages, simultaneously some recognizable, others completely unfamiliar. Cardinal Valenti hasn't recovered from his exposure, Leandro explains. His mind cannot process the perceptual expansion. He experiences all possibilities simultaneously, without filtering or integration. He was unprepared, Elena counters. What if preparation is possible? What if the fragments themselves contain the methodology for gradual, sustainable expansion? Salvatore raises an eyebrow. You believe the book contains not just the knowledge, but the means to safely integrate. That knowledge? It would be consistent with its apparent design. A technology sophisticated enough to transfer information directly to neural pathways would surely include protocols for optimizing that transfer. The old priest exchanges a glance with Leandro. something unspoken passes between them. There is a fragment that might support your theory, Salvatore says cautiously. Fragment Epsilon, recovered from Tibet in 1925. It purportedly contains methodologies for consciousness expansion through specific practices. The Vatican secured it, but never fully analyzed its content due to concerns about neural interfacing. Risks. Where is it now? In secure storage. Access requires Omega-level clearance, which you have, Elena points out. Which I have, Salvatore agrees. But using it to test your theory would constitute a significant deviation from the Vigilus Protocol. The protocol has already failed, Father. The neutralization attempt triggered exactly what you were trying to prevent. And now we know a complete alignment is coming, one that will amplify the fragment's field effect regardless of our actions. Salvatore doesn't immediately respond. Instead, he turns back toward the altar, gazing at the flickering candles as if seeking guidance from their ancient light. What you're suggesting, he says finally, would require dismantling 13 centuries of containment policy, admitting that our approach has been fundamentally misguided. Not misguided, Elena corrects. Perhaps simply completed. The containment served its purpose preserving the knowledge until humanity reached an appropriate developmental stage. And you believe we've reached that stage now? I believe we're approaching it. The convergence of the astronomical alignment with our current technological and cultural evolution seems intentional. Elena feels the weight of what she's proposing. What if the Liber Lux Tenebris was designed not just to transmit knowledge, but to time that transmission precisely? Father Leandro speaks up for the first time. The fragment I studied mentioned something similar, that the book operates across temporal dimensions, ensuring its content emerges at specific nexus points in human development. Salvatore gives the younger priest a sharp look. You didn't include that observation in your official analysis. No, Father. Leandro appears unrepentant. Some insights seemed better kept informal. Elena senses an unexpected ally in the young priest. You've experienced integration effects as well, she guesses. Since childhood, Leandro confirms. Long before joining the church. The Vigilus Protocol found me after I published certain theoretical papers that apparently corresponded too closely with concepts contained in the fragments. Salvatore rises slowly from the pew, his movement deliberate. You're both suggesting we actively work toward assembly rather than prevention, that we prepare for integration rather than containment. I'm suggesting we consider the possibility that containment has run its course, Elena clarifies, that the knowledge preserved in the Liber Lux Tenebris is now seeking expression, not randomly, but according to a design we're only beginning to comprehend. And if you're wrong, if full integration triggers not evolution but catastrophe, then we develop safeguards, controlled exposure protocols, methods for limiting field propagation if necessary. Elena stands as well, meeting the cardinal defenders. Gaze directly. But we stop treating this knowledge as inherently dangerous, a threat to be suppressed at all costs. The old priest's expression reveals nothing of his internal deliberation. After what seems an eternity, he turns to Leandro. Arrange. Access to fragment Epsilon. Secure laboratory conditions. Full monitoring protocols. He looks back at Elena. If you're willing to be the primary subject, Dr. Russo will test your theory in controlled circumstances. I am, she responds without hesitation. Understand the risks, Salvatore cautions. Direct neural interaction with this fragment could permanently alter your consciousness. The changes you're already experiencing could accelerate beyond integration capacity. Like Cardinal Valenti, or worse, each fragment affects different aspects of perception. Epsilon specifically targets the neurological structures that filter and organize sensory input. Elena considers this warning, weighing it against the certainty that has been growing within her since touching the first fragment. Something is happening, something larger than the Vigilus protocol, larger than Costa's resistance, larger, perhaps, than any individual human agenda. The fragments are converging. The knowledge they contain is seeking expression. She can either help guide that process or be carried along by it. I accept the risks, she says finally. Salvatore nods once, gravely. Then we proceed, but not here. He gestures around the chapel. This site is too public, too closely monitored by various interests. We'll use a facility outside Rome. When? Tonight. Further delay serves no purpose. He turns to leave, then pauses. Dr. Russo, I've served the Vigilus protocol for 63 years, devoted my life to containing knowledge I believed humanity wasn't ready to receive. If you're right, if that assessment was fundamentally flawed, then much of my life's work has been misguided. Or perfectly guided, Elena suggests. Perhaps you've been preserving this knowledge until exactly this moment, until someone could recognize its true purpose. The old priest offers a thin smile, a comforting interpretation. We shall see if the fragments confirm it. After they depart, Elena remains in the chapel, watching the play of light through stained glass windows. The subtle perceptual shifts she's been experiencing since the field exposure seem to intensify in this sacred space, as if the centuries of prayer and contemplation have created a resonance that amplifies her expanded awareness. For a brief, breathtaking moment, she perceives the chapel not just as it exists now, but as it has existed across time simultaneously, under construction in its prime, and in various states of repair and alteration, layers of reality superimposed, yet distinctly perceivable. The vision fades, leaving her with a profound certainty. The Liber Lux Tenebris contains not just knowledge, but a fundamental recalibration of human perception itself, a shift from sequential, filtered awareness to something more holistic, more integrated with the underlying nature of reality. Whether humanity is ready for such a shift remains an open question. But Elena increasingly suspects readiness isn't determined by external assessment, but by the very design of the book itself, a technology created to emerge and activate only when the collective consciousness reaches a compatible state. She leaves the chapel, stepping out into the Roman afternoon. The city continues its normal rhythms around her, unaware of the transformation gathering beneath the surface of everyday perception. By nightfall, she will touch fragment epsilon and cross a threshold from which there may be no return, not just for herself, but potentially for human consciousness itself. The true nature of the Liber Lux Tenebris is about to be revealed. The facility lies 2 hours outside Rome, nestled in hills that have witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. From the outside, it resembles a small research institute or perhaps a private medical center, modern but unremarkable, with no external signage to indicate its purpose. Inside, however, its true nature becomes apparent. Advanced laboratory equipment shares space with artifacts of considerable antiquity. Researchers in white coats work alongside individuals in clerical attire. Security is evident, but discreet, a place designed to protect knowledge rather than merely contain it. Elena is escorted to a preparation room by Father Leandro. The young priest has shed his formal attire for simple slacks and a sweater, looking more like a graduate student than a Vatican representative. This site officially doesn't exist, he explains as they walk through sterile corridors, funded through a network of foundations with no direct ties to the church. One of several such facilities maintained by the Vigilus Protocol. How many people work here? Elena asks. Full-time, perhaps 30, but its resources are available to a larger network of researchers who operate with varying levels of knowledge about the protocol itself. They study the fragments, among other things. The protocol's scope has expanded over centuries to include various phenomena related to consciousness and perception. Leandro opens a door to a small clinical room containing medical monitoring equipment and a single reclining chair. This is where the interaction will take place. Father Salvatore is bringing fragment Epsilon personally. Elena studies the monitoring apparatus E, heart rate, blood pressure, and several devices she doesn't recognize. What exactly are you expecting to happen? Honestly, we don't know. Leandro begins preparing the equipment. Fragment Epsilon has never been used for direct neural interaction under controlled conditions. Our understanding of its content comes primarily from historical accounts of those who encountered it before the Vatican secured it. And what do those accounts describe? Asterisk. A systematic reconfiguration of perceptual frameworks. Those who interfaced with Epsilon reported experiencing reality through entirely different cognitive structures, not hallucination, but a fundamental shift in how sensory information is processed and integrated. Leandro attaches electrodes to a headset. According to Tibetan records, the fragment was used in advanced meditation practices to achieve states that transcended ordinary consciousness. And afterward, did these practitioners return to normal perception? Some did. Others reported permanent alterations and ability to shift between perceptual modes voluntarily. Leandro's expression grows serious. But those were trained adepts who had spent decades preparing their minds for such experiences. Your case is different, because I lack that preparation. Yes, though your response to the field effect suggests an unusual capacity for integration. He finishes with the equipment and meets her gaze directly. Father Salvatore believes you may represent a new type of interaction with the fragments, one based on natural affinity rather than rigorous training. The door opens and Father Salvatore enters, accompanied by a woman in a lab coat. The Cardinal Defender carries a sealed metal container about the size of a small book. Dr. Russo. He acknowledges her with a nod. This is Dr. Marianne Schaefer, our lead neuroscientist. She'll be monitoring your physiological responses during the interaction. Dr. Schaefer offers a brisk handshake. We've prepared a mild sedative if the experience becomes overwhelming, she explains in accented English, and we can terminate the interaction immediately if your vital signs indicate distress. I understand, Elena replies, though privately. She wonders if such conventional safeguards would have any effect against the fragment's influence. Salvatore places the container on a small table beside the reclining chair. Before we proceed, I must ask once more if you're certain about this course of action. The effects of direct interaction with fragment epsilon may be irreversible. Elena considers the question carefully. Since the night at Santa Maria degli Angeli, her perception has been subtly but persistently altered. Already she experiences reality differently than before, glimpsing connections and patterns previously invisible, occasionally perceiving time as layered rather than linear. This next step isn't so much a new direction as an acceleration of a process already underway. I'm certain, she says. Salvatore studies her face for a moment, then nods. Very well. He opens the container, revealing a fragment similar to those she's seen before, the same strange iridescent material, the same quality of captured light. But where previous fragments contained visible writing, this one appears blank at first glance. Only when viewed from certain angles do patterns become visible, shifting geometries that seem to move of their own accord, reorganizing themselves even as Elena watches. The Tibetans called it the mirror of mind, Salvatore explains, not because it reflects external appearance, but because it reveals the structures of consciousness itself. Elena settles into the reclining chair as Dr. Schaefer attaches the monitoring equipment. Electrodes on her scalp for EEG, a blood pressure cuff on her arm, a pulse oximeter on her finger. We'll be recording everything, Dr. Schaefer explains. Both your physiological responses and your verbal report of the experience, if you're able to articulate it. What should I expect initially? Elena asks. Based on historical accounts, the first phase involves perceptual dissolution, Leandro says. Ordinary sensory boundaries begin to break down. This can be disorienting, but is apparently not painful. Salvatore carefully lifts the fragment from its container using specialized handling tools. Are you ready? Elena takes a deep breath and nods. Yes. Then we begin. The fragment is placed in a holder positioned directly in Elena's line of sight. For several seconds, nothing happens beyond the subtle shifting of patterns across its surface. Then, as she continues to focus on these movements, the patterns begin to extend beyond the fragment's physical boundaries, geometric forms expanding into the surrounding air as if projected by some invisible technology. It's starting, she reports. Visual patterns extending outward. The patterns accelerate their rearrangement, forming increasingly complex structures that pulse with rhythm, not random but precisely organized, like a mathematical symphony translated into visual form. Elena feels a strange resonance building within her mind, as if these external patterns are synchronizing with internal neural processes. The sensation isn't uncomfortable, but intensely unfamiliar, like discovering a new sense organ previously dormant. The patterns are communicating, she says, struggling to find adequate words. Not with language, but directly with my neural architecture. The monitoring equipment registers accelerating brain activity, particularly in regions associated with visual processing and pattern recognition. Remarkable coherence patterns, Dr. Schaefer observes. Multiple brain regions synchronizing simultaneously. The geometric forms continue expanding until they fill Elena's entire visual field. She no longer sees the laboratory around her, only the intricate, pulsing architecture of light and form, constantly reorganizing yet maintaining underlying order. Then the patterns begin to change. No longer merely visual, they start to incorporate other sensory dimensions, texture, sound, even taste and smell, all translated into a unified perceptual language that transcends ordinary categorical boundaries. Synesthetic integration, Elena reports, her voice sounding distant to her own ears, sensory distinctions dissolving. This dissolution progresses until she experiences reality, not as separate sensory streams, but as a unified field of information pure. Perception without the filtering mechanisms that normally parse experience into familiar categories. It's overwhelming, yet not chaotic. There's a profound coherence to this unfiltered perception, a natural organization that emerges when artificial boundaries are removed. I'm seeing everything, she whispers, not as separate objects or events, but as patterns of relationship, dynamic, interconnected. The monitoring equipment shows her brain activity shifting into unprecedented configurations. Regions that normally operate independently are now functioning in perfect synchrony. Total hemisphere coherence, Dr. Schaefer reports with barely contained excitement. I've never seen neural integration at this level. Elena barely hears these external observations. Her awareness has expanded beyond the confines of ordinary perception into something far more comprehensive. She experiences the laboratory not just as it exists in the present moment, but across its entire temporal extension, its construction, its current state, its future alterations, all simultaneously present, yet distinctly perceivable. More remarkably, she perceives the intentions and thought patterns of those around her, not as invasive mind reading, but as natural awareness of consciousness as an observable field phenomenon. Consciousness isn't contained within individuals, she says, the revelation flowing through her. It's a field we participate in, that we shape through attention and intention. The fragments don't create this field. They remove the perceptual barriers that prevent us from recognizing it. Her awareness continues expanding, moving beyond the immediate environment to encompass larger patterns of connection. She perceives Rome in the distance, the subtle energy fields generated by millions of minds in proximity. Further still, the planetary consciousness, a vast, intricate network of information exchange that includes but transcends human awareness. The liber lux tenebris, she says, her voice now steady and clear, despite the extraordinary nature of her experience. I understand now it's not a book of esoteric knowledge. It's a technology for recalibrating human perception, itself designed to activate at a specific stage of development, when our consciousness reaches sufficient complexity to integrate expanded awareness without fragmentation. Father Salvatore leans forward. And that stage is now beginning, Elena confirms. The astronomical alignment next June serves as both timer and amplifier. When all 7 fragments converge during that alignment, they'll generate a field effect, powerful enough to trigger a perceptual shift in anyone with sufficient neuroplasticity. How many would be affected, Leandro asks. Impossible to predict precisely. Perhaps 10% of the population initially, but the effect propagates through relationship and resonance. Over time, the shift would extend to a majority, And, and, this shift, is it beneficial or catastrophic? Salvatore's question carries the weight of his life's mission. Elena's perception delves deeper into the patterns, tracing probable outcomes across multiple timelines. What she sees isn't simple or linear, but rich with complexity and contingency. Neither, she answers, or both, depending on implementation. The shift itself is neutral, simply an expansion of perceptual capacity, but how it manifests depends on preparation, context, integration supports. She focuses directly on Salvatore. That's why the fragments are emerging now, connecting with those who can help develop integration methodologies. The book isn't seeking to impose transformation, but to facilitate it consciously. The pattern field surrounding her begins to stabilize, no longer overwhelming her perceptual systems, but interfacing with them more harmoniously. She retains awareness of ordinary reality while simultaneously perceiving its deeper patterns and connections. This is what Fragment Epsilon contains, she continues. Not just expanded perception, but the methodology for stabilizing that expansion, for integrating it with existing cognitive structures rather than replacing them. Dr. Schaefer checks the monitoring equipment with increasing amazement. Her neural organization is completely unprecedented. Multiple states of consciousness operating simultaneously rather than sequentially. The fragments were separated not to prevent humanity from accessing their knowledge, Helena says, the certainty of this insight flowing through her, but to ensure that access occurred in stages, through individuals capable of developing integration protocols for each aspect of the expanded awareness. Then the Vigilus protocol, double quotes, Salvatore, begins. Served its purpose, Helena completes his thought. The containment was necessary until humanity developed sufficient conceptual frameworks to contextualize the experience. Earlier exposure would have resulted in mysticism rather than integration interpretation through religious or supernatural frameworks rather than understanding the actual mechanisms involved. The geometric patterns began to contract, gradually withdrawing from Alana's expanded perceptual field. Not disappearing, but reorganizing into more subtle configurations, becoming part of her awareness rather than dominating it. It's stabilizing, she reports. The initial reconfiguration is complete. Dr. Schaefer monitors the readings with intense focus. Brain activity returning to sustainable patterns, but with significantly higher coherence than baseline. Some permanent reorganization seems to have occurred. Elena sits up slowly as the last of the visible patterns recede into the fragment. Her perception has fundamentally changed, yet she remains fully her self-identity intact despite the expanded awareness. How do you feel? Leandro asks. Integrated, she replies after a moment's consideration. The expanded perception hasn't disappeared, but it's no longer overwhelming. I can focus on ordinary reality while maintaining awareness of deeper patterns. Salvatore approaches, studying her with penetrating attention. And the liber lux tenebris? What happens if the fragments are fully assembled during the alignment? A field effect that facilitates similar perceptual expansion in receptive consciousness, Elena explains. Not forced transformation, but accelerated evolution for those prepared to integrate it. And those who aren't prepared would experience temporary disorientation like Cardinal Valenti, but without lasting effect unless they chose to develop the capacity. She meets Salvatore's gaze directly. The book doesn't override free will. It expands the range of choice by revealing what was previously imperceptible. The old priest considers this information, his expression revealing the weight of 13 centuries of containment policy resting on his shoulders. You're suggesting we should actively work toward assembly rather than prevention, he says finally. I'm suggesting we develop integration protocols methods for helping people navigate expanded perception safely. The fragments will converge regardless of our actions. The only question is whether that convergence happens with guidance or without it. Dr. Schaefer removes the monitoring equipment, her scientific curiosity evident. The neural reorganization appears stable, she reports. Remarkable integration across typically segregated networks. Elena stands feeling simultaneously the same and profoundly different. Her perception continues to operate on multiple levels, the ordinary physical reality of the laboratory existing alongside awareness of energy fields, intentional structures, temporal extensions. What happens now? She asks Salvatore. The Cardinal Defender looks older suddenly, the burden of decision visible in his posture. That depends on whether I accept your assessment, whether the first trust that 13 centuries of containment should transition to facilitation. You've experienced the fragments effects yourself, Elena reminds him. You know they contain truth, not deception. Truth can be dangerous when improperly contextualized. Salvatore turns the fragment in its holder, studying its shifting patterns. Yet I cannot deny the evidence before me. Your integration appears successful where others have failed. Because the time is right, Elena says with quiet certainty. The fragments are finding those capable of developing integration methodologies precisely because the larger shift is approaching. Salvatore is silent for a long moment, weighing alternatives that will affect not just the Vigilus protocol, but potentially the course of human development itself. If we proceed as you suggest, he says finally, we would need to locate the remaining fragments before the alignment. Develop comprehensive integration protocols. Prepare for a transformation whose full implications we cannot predict. Yes, and Costa's group? They still possess fragment theta. Their agenda may not align with controlled integration. Their agenda is dissemination, not destabilization, Elena counters. They believe the knowledge should be accessible to all, a position with ethical merit, even if practically problematic. You propose collaboration rather than opposition. I propose synthesis. The Vigilus protocol has preserved this knowledge for centuries. Costa's group represents the impulse toward democratization. Both perspectives have validity. Leandro speaks, up his expression thoughtful. A new protocol. Neither pure containment nor unrestricted dissemination. Exactly, Elena confirms. A transitional approach that honors the book's apparent design gradual supported expansion of human perceptual capacity. Salvatore turns away, moving to a window that overlooks the facility's grounds. The first light of dawn has begun to illuminate the eastern sky, symbolic timing not lost on any of them. 63 years, he says quietly, serving a mission I believed was protecting humanity. And now you suggest that mission is transforming into something entirely different. Not different, Elena corrects gently. Evolved. the next phase of the same essential purpose, ensuring humanity's relationship with this knowledge unfolds constructively rather than catastrophically. The old priest turns back, his decision made. Very well. We will attempt this synthesis. You propose, beginning with Costa's group. He fixes Elena with a penetrating gaze. You will make contact, initiate dialogue, determine if collaboration is possible, and if it isn't, then we develop alternative approaches. His expression hardens slightly. But understand this, Dr. Russo, while I accept the possibility that the Liber Lux Tenebris represents beneficial transformation rather than catastrophic disruption, I cannot abandon caution entirely. If your assessment proves incorrect, if full assembly threatens genuine harm, will not hesitate to implement containment measures, regardless of the cost. Elena nods, accepting this condition. That's reasonable. I'd expect nothing less. Then we proceed. Salvatore gestures to Leandro. Father, please arrange secured transport for Dr. Russo back to Rome. She has a difficult conversation ahead with Professor Costa. As preparations begin for her departure, Elena finds a moment, alone with the fragment. Its patterns continue to shift across its surface, but now she perceives these movements as language not symbolic but direct, a communication method that interfaces with consciousness itself. The fragment confirms what she's already intuited. The Liber Lux Tenebris was created precisely for this moment in human development, when technology and consciousness have evolved to a point where expanded perception can be integrated rather than merely interpreted through mystical frameworks. Its purpose is not to impose transformation, but to reveal what already exists beneath the surface of ordinary perception. The interconnected nature of consciousness, the non-linear properties of time, the field-like qualities of information exchange that transcend conventional physical limitations. In that moment of clarity, Elena understands why the Vatican feared this knowledge for so long. Not because it threatened faith, but because it transcended it, offering direct experience of what religions had tried to describe through metaphor and doctrine. The Book of Light and Darkness, named not for occult secrets, but for its function, illuminating aspects of reality that ordinary perception keeps hidden in shadow. As dawn breaks fully over the hills outside Rome, Elena Russo prepares to help guide humanity through its most profound perceptual shift in millennia, a transition, neither supernatural nor technological, but a natural evolution of consciousness itself, catalyzed by a book that has waited patiently across centuries for minds ready to comprehend its purpose. The Vigilus Protocol will continue, but transformed, no longer containing knowledge deemed too dangerous, but facilitating its integration at a pace humanity can sustain. And the fragments, separated for 13 centuries, begin their final convergence toward a moment that has been precisely calculated since their creation, when the stars align and human consciousness stands ready to perceive what has always existed beyond the veil of filtered awareness. The Forbidden Book was never meant to remain hidden forever. Its time of revelation approaches, not with apocalyptic disruption, but with the quiet dawn of expanded perception. Cardinal Lorenzo Cassoni never found what he sought in 1684, nor did the countless searchers who followed, drawn by whispers of knowledge too dangerous to exist. But the book found them, found all who were needed to preserve its fragments until the appointed time. found those with minds capable of glimpsing its purpose across centuries of secrecy and suppression. Found Elena Russo, who now carries its pattern within her transformed awareness, the first of many who will help humanity navigate the gentle apocalypse of expanded perception. The Vatican didn't hide the book to protect their power. They preserved it until we were ready to see.